Chapter 12:11. As expected of the Dark Witch. Supremacy Zitherheart had long known that her opponent wouldn't be so easy to deal with. It was already difficult to make him suffer a little. After all, at their level, unless the difference in strength was too great, it was impossible to kill her opponent. Of course, her intention wasn't to kill her opponent, but to trap her. A supremacy with the advantage of speed was extremely dangerous to ordinary human supremacies. No one knew if she would find the time to launch a sneak attack on a human supremacy. Please listen to my Zither Dao's supreme song, Spacetime Repentance. Supremacy Zitherheart took a deep breath, her eyes incomparably focused. Ding, dong. The zither music rang out, and the world changed. The flow of time in the surroundings was reversed. It was no longer moving forward, but moving backward. At first, the speed of the reversal wasn't fast, and it cancelled out the original flow of time. But as the zither music reached its climax, the speed of the reversal increased several times. It wasn't frightening to see it happen a few times, but it was frightening to see it happen a few dozen times or 100 times. Stacking up, it was unknown how many months or years it would take. Spacetime repentance, as the name implied, was the repentance of time and space, hoping to return to the past and start anew. This song was infused with Supremacy Zitherheart's understanding of the Zither Dao, as well as the profound of spacetime. As long as the zither music was present, the changes in spacetime were all under her control. Of course, there was a limit to this control. With her realm, it was impossible for her to return to a few hundred years ago, or even a few thousand years ago. There was no need to fight. The six-winged supremacy was a young supremacy, and it was unknown what he was doing a few thousand years ago. You can reverse spacetime, but I can also go against the flow. The six-winged paragon's beautiful eyes shone with a shocking cold light. The wings on her back flapped rapidly as she advanced at high speeds. As she advanced, she actually closed in on the present bit by bit. She was moving against the flow of the river of time and space. It was as though in a surging river, a weak fish could only go with the flow, while a strong fish could swim against the current. Without a doubt, the six-winged paragon was a strong fish. Spacetime repentance's ultimate profound, spacetime shift. Sovereign Zitherheart placed all 10 of her fingers on the zither strings. With a twang, the strings began to play, and the spacetime around the six-winged autarch seemed to break away from the universe, becoming a separate piece of spacetime. Then, Sovereign Zitherheart teleported this spacetime to an even more distant past. Of course, after doing all this, Zitherheart also spat out a mouthful of blood, her entire body weakened significantly. Spacetime repentance's control over spacetime was simply too strong, which led to a huge backlash. If it was an ordinary spacetime repentance, it would at most weaken Prime Zitherheart for a short period of time. However, after using spacetime shift, she lost at least 2,000 years of her lifespan. Even autarchs had limited lifespans. Under normal circumstances, autarchs could only live for 100,000 years. 2,000 years was no small number. Fortunately, I can trap her for a while. Supreme Zitherheart heaved a sigh of relief. Although she had sent the six-winged sovereign over, with his strength, he would definitely be able to rush back. It was just a matter of time. After losing her opponent, Zitherheart began to help the human autarchs fight against the alien autarchs. In the battle between autarchs, the giant tribe's Mountain Sea Autarch and the Yaksha tribe's Sky Splitter were the most powerful. The Mountain Sea Autarch was 400 feet tall, which was equivalent to 132 meters. Although Sky Splitter wasn't as tall, the Yaksha wings on his back were large enough. When they were spread out, they were dozens of meters long. Compared to the Yaksha wings, his body was much smaller, only 10 meters tall. The battle between the two was different from the other autarchs. They fought head-on without any tricks or tricks. They just fought head-on. Whoever fell first would be the loser. The Mountain Sea Autarch's defense was stronger. After all, the giant tribe relied on defense to survive. Sky Splitter's attack was stronger. Every move he made tore through the void. Wherever the two of them went, the sound of the sky collapsing and the earth shattering could be heard. Sometimes, it was like a tsunami, sometimes, it was like a volcano erupting, sometimes, it was like the earth was collapsing, and sometimes, it was like heaven and earth were being destroyed. The number of autarchs on both sides added up to more than 50. Countless planets were destroyed by the shockwaves. Even planets with life weren't spared. The Xuanwu ruins was expanding. With every battle, the Xuanwu ruins would expand a little. Of course, the battle between the Golden Buddha supremacy and the Earth Demon supremacy was the most terrifying. The autarchs participating in this battle were only a portion of the various races. After all, this wasn't a decisive battle, and it wasn't a matter of life and death. There wasn't a need to call all the autarchs over. They had to leave some behind to protect the important areas of their races. Therefore, the Earth Demon supremacy and the Golden Buddha supremacy had the highest status and were the strongest. The Earth Demon supremacy and the Golden Buddha supremacy were already fighting fiercely. The Earth Demon supremacy let out a long roar. His long black hair soared into the sky, covering the sun and moon. His hands were pitch black. When he struck out with his palm, the pitch-black palm wind transformed into countless evil spirits that pounced at the Golden Buddha supremacy. Among the evil spirits, there was the Evil Spirit King and the Evil Spirit Ancestor. They surrounded the Golden Buddha supremacy, wanting to bite his flesh. This was the Earth Demon supremacy's unique skill, Thousand Ghost Pilgrimage. The Sky Demon Palm was strong in terms of attack power, while the Thousand Ghost Pilgrimage was strong in terms of endurance. As long as the Earth Demon supremacy's energy wasn't exhausted, there would be an endless number of evil spirits that would never disappear. Although the Golden Buddha supremacy wasn't afraid of being bitten by thousands of evil spirits, he couldn't escape in a short time. After all, there were too many evil spirits in all directions. There were even evil spirits surging over from the void. The Earth Demon supremacy's palm wind wasn't that easy to avoid. Since he couldn't escape, the Golden Buddha supremacy didn't move. His six-jong golden body sat cross-legged in the void, and below him was a huge golden lotus platform. The moment the lotus platform appeared, the evil spirits died one after another. They couldn't get close to the Golden Buddha supremacy at all. Boundless Buddha light. The Golden Buddha supremacy's eyes seemed to be closed. He struck out with his palm, and there was a swastika on his palm. The swastika shone with golden light as if it was branded on his palm. As the palm struck out, a golden wave soared into the sky, attacking the Earth Demon supremacy on the other side of the evil spirit tide. Haha. Golden Buddha supremacy, didn't you want to know what we are prepared for? The Earth Demon supremacy soared into the sky and collided with the golden palm head-on. With a pu sound, the golden palm shattered. The Earth Demon supremacy wielded a blood-red spear and attacked the Golden Buddha supremacy. The spear was too fast, so fast that the Golden Buddha supremacy couldn't react in time. This wasn't the power of the Earth Demon supremacy, but the power of the blood-red spear. Saint Tool. The Golden Buddha supremacy's expression changed. With a pu sound, the 9 transformations golden body that was said to be unbreakable was broken. The blood-red spear pierced into the Golden Buddha supremacy's shoulder. The tip of the spear came out from his back, bringing along a large amount of golden blood. With a painful expression, the Golden Buddha supremacy used all his strength to counterattack the Earth Demon supremacy. The Earth Demon supremacy also countered with his left palm. Bang! The Earth Demon supremacy was sent flying. The Golden Buddha supremacy was also thrown off the lotus platform. Chapter 12:12. The demons actually have another saint artifact. What should we do now? The Golden Buddha Supreme won't be able to withstand a saint artifact. Even if the true Martial Supreme came, he wouldn't be able to withstand the sharpness of a saint artifact. At most, he would barely be able to hold his ground. No wonder the demons dared to invade the Black Tortoise Galaxy again. They've prepared a saint artifact. The Supremes of both sides were paying close attention to this battle. When the Supremes of the demon race saw the Earth Demon Venerable injuring the Golden Buddha Supreme with a single strike, they were overjoyed. On the other hand, the faces of the human race Supremes were gloomy and anxious. What a good killing move. The Golden Buddha Supreme's face was ashen, the golden light around him dimmed significantly, showing signs of flaws. His 9 revolutions golden body wasn't afraid of any kind of attack. Even if the Sky Archdevil came, it could only exhaust his energy, unable to injure him. However, a Saint artifact was different. It contained an unimaginable power. As long as one was hit, one's origin would be drained, requiring one's full strength to suppress it. As for recovering, it would take years of hard work. However, there was no time for him to suppress his injuries. He didn't expect the demons to have another Saint artifact. Most likely, not even the ordinary supremes among the demons were aware of this, only the core members knew some inside information. The so-called Saint artifact was a powerful weapon above supreme artifacts. In fact, a Saint artifact was a transformation from a supreme artifact, and the key to the transformation was divine stones. Speaking of divine stones, one had to mention the miracles. Miracles were treasures left behind by a true god. Not only were there all kinds of treasures inside, but there were also divine stones that contained a trace of a true god's power. Every time a supreme artifact fused with a divine stone, it would grow stronger, and after a certain amount, it would transform into a Saint artifact. If an ordinary supremes had a Saint artifact, they would immediately become a super supremes. A super supremes with a Saint artifact would be invincible under the heavens. Only a supremes with a Saint artifact could contend against them. At present, the number of known Saint artifacts could be counted on one's fingers. The demon's heavenly demon sacred armor, the human race's true martial divine gen, the Yakshaw tribe's blood-dripping spear, the giant tribe's giant god's pillar, there were less than 10 of them. Every additional one was a major event. This was countless times more terrifying than having an additional supreme being. The demon's sacred heavenly demonic armor was a defensive Saint artifact. Although after refining it, its offensive power had increased, it was still limited. It was only a few times stronger than a supreme artifact, far from a pure offensive Saint artifact. But now, the demons actually had an offensive Saint artifact. No wonder they dared to invade the Black Tortoise Galaxy again. Supreme Golden Buddha, this spear is called the Bloodthirst Spear. It's your honor to die in its hands. Earth Demon Venerable had a triumphant smile on his face. The predecessor of the bloodthirsty spear was not the weapon of one of the supremes of the demons. To be more specific, it was an ancient sacred weapon. The celestial demon Venerable obtained it by chance and then began to formulate the invasion plan. The Earth Demon Venerable only had the temporary right to use the bloodthirsty spear. After the war, the celestial demon Venerable would take it back. With the Sky Demon sacred armor and bloodthirsty spear, Sky Demon Sovereign had a faint aura of invincibility. Bring it on. The Golden Buddha Supreme circulated the 9 revolutions golden body with all his might. The golden radiance on his body intensified once again, like a golden flame. Although the muzzle on his shoulder couldn't be closed, it was no longer bleeding. Clearly, the Golden Buddha Supreme had temporarily suppressed the injury, preventing it from spreading and spreading. Reckless fool. The bloodthirsty spear in Earth Demon Venerable's hand danced several times as he attacked Supreme Golden Buddha again. This time, Supreme Golden Buddha focused all his attention on the spear. If he could predict the spear's trajectory, he could at least slightly resist it. Otherwise, if there was another injury, the situation would be dire. I see it. The Golden Buddha Sovereign was glaring angrily as he slapped the side of the bloodthirst spear with his palm in an attempt to block it. Dream on. The bloodthirsty spear was like a snake in Earth Demon Venerable's hand. The spear bent, and the tip pierced through Supreme Golden Buddha's right arm, cutting off a piece of golden flesh. Supreme Golden Buddha, I'm here to help you. Supreme Zither Heart hurried over when she saw that the situation was bad. Die. Earth Demon Venerable casually stabbed his spear at Supreme Zither Heart. Goddess Hand. Paragon Zither Heart started playing the tune of Goddess Hand. Instantly, an image of a goddess appeared. A gigantic goddess hand pressed against the blood-colored spear light, and with a crackling sound, the goddess hand shattered. Paragon Zither Heart coughed out a mouthful of blood. Earth Demon Venerable was much stronger than her, and with the bloodthirsty spear, it was already not bad that she could block it once. It was all thanks to the mystical goddess hand. Chinshin, leave. This demon isn't someone you can handle. The wound on Supreme Golden Buddha's right arm stopped bleeding, but there was a piece of flesh missing, which looked very disharmonious. Emichem Supreme Zither Heart nodded. She thought that she could stop the Earth Demon Venerable for a while, but she didn't expect that he could injure her with a Saint artifact. If he attacked again, she would be heavily injured even if she didn't die. There was no third possibility. However, she shuddered when she thought of the consequences of Supreme Golden Buddha's death. The human race would lose a Supreme, and this was a catastrophic result. Even 10 ordinary Supremes couldn't make up for it. Moreover, there hadn't been many Supremes appearing in the human race in recent years. After her was Supreme Langya, and after that, there were very few heaven-defying quasi-supremes. Of course, Green-Robed Emperor was one of them. As for those peerless geniuses who had just shown their brilliance, they were still too immature and needed time to develop. However, the demons wouldn't give them that time. They had invaded the Black Tortoise Starfield this time, and next would be the White Tiger Starfield, then the Vermilion Bird Starfield, and the Azure Dragon Starfield. The demons' plan to devour the human race step by step was being carried out. Supreme Golden Buddha, I've said it before. This time, you will die without a doubt. Earth Demon Venerable stared coldly at Supreme Golden Buddha. Death isn't scary. I'm already prepared. However, if you want to kill me, you have to pay a price. Supreme Golden Buddha didn't panic. As a Supreme Venerable, he had long seen through life and death. To him, death was also life. The only thing he couldn't let go of was the human race. Hehe, it seems that you're prepared to die. In that case, I'll fulfill your wish. Earth Demon Venerable didn't say anything else. With a roar, he displayed his strongest technique and charged at Supreme Golden Buddha. This spear surpassed time and space. Wherever the spear passed, there was no longer space or time. There was only slaughter and bloodthirst. Anyone below the level of a Supreme would immediately fall into depravity upon sensing this aura. Supreme Golden Buddha's eyes drooped. He put his palms together, and golden light burst out from his body. He looked like a Buddha who had sacrificed himself for a righteous cause. Suddenly, he struck out with his palm. This was also his strongest palm strike, a palm that had sacrificed life and death. Unfortunately, the gap was still a gap. Without a divine artifact, even if Supreme Golden Buddha cultivated the 9 revolutions golden body to the 9th revolution, there was no way he could win. At most, he could hold on for a long time. Poof! The golden palm was pierced. Earth Demon Venerable was unstoppable. He pointed his spear at Supreme Golden Buddha's forehead. If the spear hit, Supreme Golden Buddha would definitely die. Clang! At the critical moment, a bronze mace blocked the bloodthirsty spear. The tip of the mace shook, and the bloodthirsty spear immediately bent. Earth Demon Venerable flew backward with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Supreme True Martial. Earth Demon Venerable stared at the tall middle-aged man with the bronze mace. This person was the mainstay of the human race, the #1 Supreme True Martial. The bronze mace in his hand was none other than the divine artifact, the True Martial Divine Mace. Chapter 12-13. The True Martial Divine Truncheon was the strongest divine weapon. The True Martial Supreme was one of the top Supremes in the universe. Only the Celestial Demon Master of the Demons and a few other Supremes could contend with him. The human race had been able to stand for so many years without him. He was like a mountain, shielding the human race from the wind and the rain. Without the Golden Buddha Supreme, the human race would suffer a great loss. Without the True Martial Supreme, the human race would perish. It could be said that his life was tied to the survival of the entire race. Therefore, under normal circumstances, he wouldn't show himself. He had to protect himself first, then the human race. But now, he had no choice. The Golden Buddha Supreme couldn't be missing either. Without his right-hand man, he couldn't do anything alone. Although his face was expressionless, his heart was filled with bitterness. Come out, Celestial Demon Master. The True Martial Supreme looked into the void. Ha, I can't hide it from you. Suddenly, a tall demonic figure walked out of the void. He had 3 horns on his head and a demonic eye between his eyebrows. His body was almost 7 jong tall, one jong taller than the Golden Buddha Supreme and almost the same height as the true Martial Supreme. He wore a black and golden sacred armor that seemed to be one with his body without any gaps. The terrifying aura he exuded was more than 2 times stronger than that of the Earth Demon Venerable. This was the strongest supremes of the demons, the Celestial Demon Master. It would be strange if you didn't come. The true Martial Supreme looked calm. True Martial Supreme, I'll give the human race a chance. If you can retreat from the Black Tortoise Galaxy, this war will be over. I'll give you some time to consider. The Celestial Demon Master was shocked. Oh, you'll give us a chance? The true Martial Supreme asked. Of course, it's not that we want to exterminate the human race, it's just that the territories occupied by the human race are a little too much. The heavens are unfair. The Black Tortoise Galaxy is only one of the 4 major galaxies. Losing one doesn't mean much to the human race, right? 3 vital galaxies are enough for you to thrive. The true Martial Supreme sneered. This time it's the Black Tortoise Galaxy. The next time, it'll be the White Tiger Galaxy. You're dreaming if you think you can take the Black Tortoise Galaxy without losing a single soldier. As expected, you are still so stubborn. Then let's fight. Actually, I hope that you refuse. After so many years, let me see how much your strength has improved. Give me the gun. The Heavenly Demon Sovereign stretched out his right hand. Whoosh! Earth Demon Venerable threw the Bloodthirst Spear to Celestial Demon Venerable. If you want to fight, let's fight. Supreme True Martial was not afraid at all. Clad in the Sky Demon Sacred Armor and wielding the bloodthirsty spear, Sky Demon Sovereign's aura reached a new peak, as if it would never end. In comparison, True Martial Sovereign was starting to pale in comparison. Kill. The Celestial Demon Sovereign raised the bloodthirst spear high up, and his voice echoed throughout the boundless space. Hearing the heavenly Archdevil Ancestor's voice, the soldiers and generals of the Demons Alliance went into a frenzy. The heavenly Archdevil Ancestor's strength gave them hope of defeating the human race. As long as they could defeat the human race and occupy the Black Tortoise Starfield, every one of them would reap a great harvest. The stronger ones might even be given a city. True Martial Domain, boundless 7 stars. Supreme True Martial's expression was cold and solemn. An incomparably terrifying aura suddenly filled the air, covering the vast starry sky. This was Supreme True Martial's realm of True Martial. In an instant, all the human soldiers who participated in the battle saw the 7 shining stars. As long as the 7 stars existed, Supreme True Martial would also exist. In terms of domain, Supreme True Martial was stronger than Sky Demon Sovereign. Of course, the Sky Demon Sovereign's Sky Demon realm was not bad either. It was like the capital of a demon kingdom. With the Sky Demon realm, the Sky Demon Sovereign's power could be unleashed to 120% or even more. This meant that ordinary Supremes were no match for him. The True Martial Sovereign's True Martial realm was the same. Boom, boom, boom. Before the two of them made a move, the Sky Demon Domain and True Martial Domain collided. In an instant, time and space shattered, turning into chaos. The stronger the domain, the more exclusive it was. It was impossible for them to coexist. Supreme True Martial, take my spear. Sky Demon Sovereign shot into the sky and dived down, thrusting his spear at Supreme True Martial. In Sky Demon Sovereign's hands, the Bloodthirst Spear was more than twice as powerful as Earth Demon Sovereign's. The sky was filled with crimson spear radiance. The radiance cut through time and space, as well as Supreme True Martial's True Martial Domain. Bring it on. The True Martial Supreme swung the True Martial Divine Mace. Clang. All the Supremes' hearts skipped a beat. The sound of the Bloodthirst Spear and the True Martial Divine Mace clashing was too terrifying. It was like an explosion in their hearts, making their blood boil. At the point of contact between the two of them, sparks that seemed to split the heavens and earth sprayed out. Although each of these sparks was only the size of a longan, their power could probably annihilate countless ordinary planets. Even planets with life would suffer damage because they not only contained the energy of both sides, but also their wills. The first exchange ended in a draw. Both were pushed back a few million miles. Whoosh. The two clashed again without needing any time. Clang. This time, the sparks were like fire snakes or fire dragons. They were so hot that they could melt everything in the world. Supreme True Martial, is your True Martial 7 trials just SOSO? Said the Sky Demon Sovereign. There are 5 more trials. Let's see. Supreme True Martial had 7 ultimate arts. When combined, they were the True Martial 7 trials. The weakest of the 7 trials was a Supreme Martial Art. Of course, there was a difference in strength between Supreme Martial Arts. It all depended on the degree of integration of ultimacy. The 5th trial, Human Disaster, Supreme True Martial split into 4 and surrounded Heavenly Demon Venerable. Each of them had 100% of their strength, and there was not a trace of falsehood. The 4 of them had quadrupled combat strength, which was many times more exquisite than Peerless King Arju's Martial Path Phantom. After all, Arju's Martial Path Phantom could only display one unique skill, while Supreme True Martial's was obviously different. If I can't even block the Human Disaster, then I don't need to live anymore. The Sky Demon Sovereign sneered. His entire body suddenly spun. Pack. A sound like an egg breaking was heard. A giant black hole formed, and time and space collapsed. Crackle. Supreme True Martial's attack landed on the black hole and was instantly absorbed, making the black hole grow. The 6th trial, Heaven and Earth Disaster. Supreme True Martial's expression did not change. The 4 figures merged into one. The next moment, Supreme True Martial swung his mace at the black hole. This attack contained the 4 ultimacies of Earth, Water, Fire, and Wind. The 4 ultimacies formed a perfect combination, glowing with chaotic light. The black hole could absorb any kind of energy, but it could not absorb the chaotic energy. Bang! The black hole was split open. Take my Sky Demon Spear. The Sky Demon palm of the Sky Demon Lord was no longer restricted by form. It could be transformed into any other martial art. With the bloodthirsty spear, the power of the Sky Demon palm increased by several times. A giant demon god shadow glowed with a bloody light. Crack. Something was broken. The 2 flew out at the same time. This time, Supreme True Martial was at a disadvantage. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. After all, he did not have a divine weapon like the Sky Demon Sacred Armor, so he could not block all the impact. On the other hand, the Sky Demon Lord could ignore defense and only attack. Chapter 12:14. Looks like Supreme True Martial is no match for Celestial Demon Sovereign. We'll definitely win this battle. Earth Demon Sovereign calmed down and looked at Supreme Golden Buddha. Supreme Golden Buddha was about the same level as him at his peak. Now that he was injured by the Bloodlust Spear, he must have lost some of his origin energy. In addition, he had to use a portion of his cultivation to suppress his injuries. It would be amazing if he had 60 to 70% of his peak strength. Earth Demon Sovereign, on the other hand, was still at his peak. The 2 started fighting again without saying a word. Supreme Lang Ya and another Supreme from the Demon race injured a Supreme from the Yaksha race. But at this moment, the blood-eyed Supreme rushed over and charged at Supreme Lang Ya furiously. Supreme Zither Heart fought against Supreme Six-Winged, who had just returned from the river of time and space. It was a tragic scene. Supreme True Martial, you're no match for me. From now on, I'm the rightful number 1 sovereign. I'm invincible. Celestial Demon Sovereign fought fiercely with the Bloodlust Spear in hand. I may not be your match, but it's still too early for you to become the number 1 sovereign. Supreme True Martial wasn't a match for the Heavenly Demon Venerable. Even though he had only suffered a little, the Heavenly Demon Venerable could maintain his peak battle power with the Heavenly Demon Sacred Armor, while he couldn't. However, the universe was so vast that even a Supreme could only see half an iceberg. Who knew if there were any powerful beings or races? I'll see who's stronger than me after I take over this universe. Celestial Demon Sovereign didn't hide his ambition. Bring it on. It won't be that easy to take over the Black Tortoise Galaxy. Supreme True Martial was wearing a 7-star Daoist robe. The True Martial Divine mace in his hand shone like lightning. That injury didn't affect him at all. This was how battles between Supreme Sovereigns were. As long as the gap wasn't too big, the battle wouldn't end quickly. On the other side, the battle between Supreme Golden Buddha and Earth Demon Sovereign had reached its climax. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the Golden Buddha Sovereign was on the verge of collapse. This wasn't because of the pressure from the Earth Demon Sovereign, but the injuries left behind by the bloodthirsty spear. Every time he exchanged blows with the Earth Demon Sovereign, his injuries would worsen. Unless he could stop the battle immediately, it would only be a vicious cycle. Supreme Golden Buddha, what's wrong? Can't hold on any longer? I still want to fight with you a little longer. Earth Devil Venerable had a relaxed expression. He also didn't want to force the Golden Buddha Supreme into a corner. Otherwise, if the other party disregarded his injuries and attacked himself, he wouldn't be able to handle it. What he wanted was exactly this kind of effect, boiling a frog in warm water. It's all right. It's not as bad as you think. The Golden Buddha Supreme formed a seal with his left hand, and his right hand turned into a Golden Buddha seal that blasted out. Brat, damn it. Once your immortal energy is exhausted, I will definitely make you suffer. After the soul-extinguishing needle's power was completely exhausted, Green Boring Emperor had no way to deal with Yi Chen. In terms of offense, the latter was only slightly weaker than him, but in terms of agility, the latter was much stronger. He couldn't even teleport near the latter, as the latter would always dodge at the last moment. Moreover, his sixth-layer sword domain made him gnash his teeth in hatred. This kind of sword domain, which contained the power of space freezing, was simply the natural enemy of teleportation. If the latter's cultivation base were a bit higher, reaching the seventh layer of life and death realm, he reckoned that he wouldn't be able to teleport accurately. Green Boring Emperor felt that Yi Chen was hard to deal with, but how could Yi Chen not feel that every second was torture? His battle strength was at most equivalent to a low-level emperor, far inferior to a mid-level emperor like Green Boring Emperor. Although he could drag it out until now, as time went on, Green Boring Emperor would still be able to take advantage of the situation. After all, a gap was a gap. It could be made up for a while, but not for a long time. I'm afraid the human race is going to lose. Although Yi Chen couldn't see the situation in the supreme battlefield, the appearance of the Sky Demon Venerable gave him a huge shock. The other party's kill was full of confidence. Moreover, since the Demons Alliance dared to attack Black Tortoise Starfield, they must have at least a 50% chance of success. Otherwise, there would be no need to muster such a large force. With the defeat of the human race, the demons will become even more powerful. Yi Chen couldn't help but think of Elysium. The power of the demons covered almost the boundless starry sky, and they could be found everywhere. Yi Chen fought for Elysium, and now, it was the turn of the entire human race. Unfortunately, his current strength was too weak, not even at the seventh layer of life and death realm. Even if he wanted to help, he didn't have the strength. In Elysium, he was a leading figure, but in the four great starfields, he was just an ordinary member. To grow to a certain height, he needed sufficient time. The situation of the human race is pressing. Whether it's for myself or for the human race, I have to increase my strength as soon as possible. Yi Chen inwardly said. The longer time passed, the weaker Gold Buddha Supreme's battle strength became. At this moment, the golden radiance on his body was gradually extinguishing, like a candle reaching its end. This won't do. I have to hold on for a while longer. Gold Buddha Supreme was clear that once he fell, Earth Demon Venerable would be able to deal with the other Supremes, and the situation would be dire. Die, Gold Buddha Supreme. Earth Demon Venerable wouldn't give Gold Buddha Supreme a chance. He didn't hesitate to waste demonic power and bombarded Gold Buddha Supreme. The frightening shockwaves caused the space within thousands of li to become chaotic. Anyone below the Supreme's realm would either be killed by the shockwaves or turned into nothingness by the space-time turbulence. Puff! A mouthful of golden blood spurted out as Gold Buddha Supreme was blasted away. What was frightening was not the injuries inflicted by Earth Demon Venerable, but the injuries on his right arm and shoulder. These two injuries were caused by the Bloodthirst Spear. Now that Gold Buddha Supreme was no longer suppressing them, they immediately went berserk. Since the Bloodthirst Spear had the name of Bloodthirst, it naturally wasn't just for show. Gold Buddha. True Marshal Supreme's brows twitched as he looked at Gold Buddha Supreme. I can still hold on. Gold Buddha Supreme barely managed to open his mouth. True Marshal Supreme didn't speak. His face was filled with contemplation. After a long time, he took a deep breath, gathered his true essence and shouted, "Everyone, listen to my command. Retreat from the Black Tortoise Starfield. We will counterattack another day." Originally, True Marshal Supreme didn't plan to give up the Black Tortoise Starfield so easily. But now, the situation wasn't on their side. Gold Buddha Supreme obviously couldn't hold on any longer. Compared to the Black Tortoise Starfield, the future of the human race was more important. He couldn't put all his strength here. Otherwise, the human race would be destroyed, and the Demons Alliance would at most suffer a great loss. "We've lost." That's True Marshal Supreme's voice. "We've really lost." Countless Human Race Alliance soldiers were bewildered. "Everyone, retreat." The marshals and generals were the first to react. They couldn't care less about the shock in their hearts. It was more important to retreat. Unless it was a critical moment, True Marshal Supreme wouldn't give the order to retreat. Haha, don't let them escape. Kill. On the other side, the Demons Alliance's morale soared, and they chased after Yi Chen in a frenzy. The number of sovereigns chasing after Yi Chen increased from 1 Green Drum sovereign to 3. Of the other 2, one was a mid-level sovereign, and the other was a low-level sovereign. Kill. Kill. The defeat was too tragic. In an instant, countless experts died on the human race's side, almost half of their original number. There were many transmission arrays on Heaven Eye Star. Yi Chen rushed to Heaven Eye Star with all his might. As for the Snow Air Emperor, the Stone Statue Emperor, and the others, they were completely separated. Boom, boom. Being chased by 3 sovereigns, no matter how good Yi Chen's movement technique was, it was useless. He was hit twice in a row. The time immemorial singular energy armor on his body was damaged, and the immortal energy in his body was completely exhausted. On Heaven Eye Star, countless Human Race Alliance soldiers were teleporting. It was actually better for them to be organized. After all, if they were scattered, they would only lose more lives. Unfortunately, they weren't real soldiers, and obeying orders was their number 1 rule. Secondly, the battlefield was too vast, and there was no way to gather everyone together. If they had the time to gather, they might as well run. As for which option was better, no one knew. In any case, no matter which option was chosen, the human race's casualties were inevitable. This was the cruelty of war. Entering Heaven Eye Star's atmosphere, Yi Chen's speed decreased sharply. Fortunately, he had the Space Profound, so his agility didn't decrease much. At this time, he had no choice but to use others as his cover. There were countless sovereigns of the Human Race Alliance rushing to Heaven Eye Star. Yi Chen was not eye-catching at all. If the 3 sovereigns wanted to use their soul power to scan him, they would need to spend 1 or 2 breaths' time. Taking advantage of this short time, Yi Chen rushed to the nearest transmission array. Swish. A light flashed, and Yi Chen appeared on the transmission array. There were many people beside him, and they were all anxious, waiting to be teleported. These few breaths' time felt like years to them. Here. The Green Boring Emperor found Yi Chen. Instantly, the 3 sovereigns rushed over. 2 breaths' time. 3 breaths' time. Buzz. The transmission array was activated. But then, the light of the transmission array was shattered. Chapter 12:15. Get Lost. In the teleportation formation, there was not only Yi Chen, but also a human sovereign. He was Wolf Fist King, the second disciple of Beast Fist King, a 4-star general of the human race. He had inherited Beast Fist King's Tao of Beast Fist, but it was more of his own. He had been raised by a giant wolf, so he had a deep understanding of wolves. His fist art was Wolf Fist, the ultimate wolf fist. Howl. The roar of a giant wolf rang out as the Wolf Boxing Emperor threw a punch at the Green Boring Emperor and the other 2. This punch transformed into countless vicious wolves that wanted to devour their target, blotting out the sky and covering the earth with a vigorous and ruthless momentum. Bang, bang, bang. Green Boring Emperor and the other 2 were not prepared for the sudden appearance of a sovereign. Caught off guard, They were all sent flying, their hair disheveled. It's a mid-level sovereign, and a little stronger than Green Boring Emperor. Yi Chen judged the strength of Wolf Fist King based on the comparison. Among the mid-level sovereigns, there were strong and weak ones. The weak ones were only a little stronger than the low-level sovereigns, while the strong ones were close to high-level sovereigns. Beast Fist King, the master of Wolf Fist King, was a high-level sovereign, so Wolf Fist King should not be too weak. Continue to activate the teleportation formation. Wolf Fist King did not dare to be careless. At this moment, the entire Tianmu star was in a mess. Earlier, a supreme of the foreign races had sent out a palm energy to attack the Tianmu star, causing damage to the star. The energy inside was constantly fluctuating, and no one knew if it would explode. Therefore, if they did not leave now, they would not be able to leave later. A defeated army could only abandon their armor. If they could leave in an orderly manner, then they would not be defeated. At most, they would be at a disadvantage. Buzz. The teleportation formation was activated again, flashing brightly. Whoosh. The next moment, the teleportation light swept into the void, and Green Boring Emperor and the other two failed to stop it. He escaped. Green Boring Emperor stomped his foot in anger, gritting his teeth. When this kid grows up, he will definitely be a disaster for us. What a pity. Another low-level sovereign shook his head. It is a pity, but it is nothing. Even if he can become a supreme in the future, it will be a few thousand years later. Within a few thousand years, perhaps the entire human race will be wiped out by us. Why should we be afraid of an immature genius? Green Boring Emperor, you are too serious. If this kid were a sovereign, then we would have to worry. The low-level sovereign realm cultivator with a beard didn't care much. He's good. Let's go. Although the Green Boring Emperor was unwilling, he had no choice but to swallow this bitter pill. The image of Yi Chen was deeply engraved in his mind. This man was too terrifying. His ability to survive was simply unparalleled. If he could not be killed today, he did not know if he would really leave a scourge behind. After all, no one knew what would happen in the future. It took an entire week for all the humans and the Human Alliance to retreat from the Black Tortoise Galaxy. As for those who did not retreat, they were all dead. The top 10 military planets were completely emptied. It was impossible for the upper echelons of the human race to leave behind the treasures for the foreign races like the demons and the other races. All of them had been moved away. The only painful thing was that there were still countless humans on the Black Tortoise Galaxy's life planets who did not manage to move away in time. Most of them were ordinary humans, and their numbers were overwhelming. The upper echelons of the human race did not expect to be defeated so quickly, so ruthlessly. They were not prepared at all, otherwise, they would have started the relocation plan long ago. Fortunately, the Black Tortoise Galaxy had experienced many wars, thus the number of humans living here was not too high, probably less than 1,000th of the number in the other three major galaxies. Moreover, when the news of the human race's retreat reached them, they also used transmission arrays to move to other galaxies. Some forces, families, and temporary organizations used puppet warships to migrate. Fleets of fleets flew across the void. In short, this week was known as the Black Tortoise Galaxy's Day of Darkness, and this month was the Moon of Darkness. All of humanity would remember this crushing defeat. After a series of teleportations, Yi Chen and the others arrived at the White Tiger Starfield. Little brother, what's your name? Wolf Fist Emperor was quite interested in Yi Chen. He was merely at the 6th layer of life and death realm, yet he was being chased by 3 emperors. More importantly, he was still alive. This was simply inconceivable. Yi Chen, many thanks for your help earlier. Yi Chen expressed his gratitude. You're welcome. They also blocked my way. Wolf Fist Emperor shook his head. I'm the second disciple of Beast Fist Emperor. If you need any help in the future, you can come find me. Wolf Fist Emperor was not a person who would pursue the matter to the bottom. After leaving behind these words, he teleported away. Beast Fist Emperor? Yi Chen had heard Scarlet Wind Emperor mention him before. He was a 4-star marshal by Golden Spear Marshal's side. He was quite powerful, a peak existence among high-level emperors. To be able to become the second disciple of Beast Fist Emperor, he was clearly not an ordinary person. No wonder he was so powerful, able to repel 3 emperors with a single punch. It's time to return to God Paradise. Next, I'll try my best to break through to the 7th layer. There was a huge gap between the 6th layer and the 7th layer. After crossing it, one's battle strength would increase by 100-fold. After all, one would have enough Jin Yuan to operate an Emperor-grade weapon. Of course, the most important thing was that one's soul power would increase sharply upon reaching the 7th layer. For Yi Chen, this was like adding wings to a tiger. White Tiger Starfield, on a 9th-grade life planet, human supremes were gathered in a palace. Gold Buddha Supreme, you must be careful. True Martial Supreme asked. Gold Buddha Supreme smiled bitterly. I'm afraid my battle strength won't recover to its peak within several thousand years. The power of the bloodthirsty spear can't be expelled at once. It can only be slowly worn away. Don't speak for now. True Martial Supreme walked behind Gold Buddha Supreme and pressed his palm on him. After a long while, True Martial Supreme slowly let out a breath of turbid chi. What a powerful bloodthirsty spear. It's on the same level as the Immortal power, and even more spiritual. True Martial Supreme, we've suffered a crushing defeat this time, and Black Tortoise Starfield has changed owners. Will the demons continue to attack White Tiger Starfield in the coming years? Black Tortoise Starfield and White Tiger Starfield were adjacent to each other. A Supreme asked. True Martial Supreme pondered for a moment before replying, what will come will come. It's said that our human race has an endless stream of geniuses. But compared to the demons, there's still a gap. This time, we've finally seen the root of the problem. Although the bloodthirsty spear was the biggest factor, the human race didn't have the advantage in terms of the number of supremes. Even without the bloodthirsty spear, the human race wouldn't be able to win if they continued fighting. Just Supreme Lang Ya and Supreme Zither Heart alone wouldn't be able to solve the problem. Now that Supreme Golden Buddha was heavily injured and his origin was damaged, the human race's peak combat strength was in danger. Black Tortoise Starfield, we'll get it back sooner or later. Lang Ya Supreme said solemnly. Nodding lightly, True Martial Supreme said, I've decided. In 100 years, we'll open the Supreme Holy Land. Chapter 12:16. The news of the human race's retreat from the Black Tortoise Starfield spread to the other 3 major life starfields. For a time, everyone was worried for their lives. The Demons Alliance was too domineering. This time, it was the Black Tortoise Starfield. Next time, would it be the White Tiger Starfield, Vermilion Bird Starfield, and Azure Dragon Starfield? Once all 4 major life starfields fell, the human race could only return to the inhabited worlds. That was akin to catching a turtle in a jar, never to see the light of day again. The barbarian race, the giant race, and the other races were also on alert. They were bound together with the human race for good or ill. Without the human race, they would not be able to compete with the Demons Alliance. This was also the main reason why they spared no effort to help the human race. This time, the failure of the human race would not bring them any benefits. They did not have a competitive relationship with the human race, nor did they want to replace the human race as the leader of the Demon Alliance. The Barbarians. Doka Star Region, Barbaric Planet. The barbarian tribe's number 1 Venerable Barbarian, slowly said, it is not a good thing for the human race to lose the Black Tortoise Galaxy. From now on, the entire race will be on the 3rd level of alert. If necessary, we will raise it to the 2nd or even the 1st level. In normal times, no race would go on a level 3 alert, as it would consume too much resources. However, the current situation was different. The human race had suffered a setback while the Demons Alliance had won a landslide victory. Who knew if the Demons' followers would also be interested in the barbarian territories? Taking the human race as an example, if the Black Tortoise Starfield had not been invaded by the barbarian tribes, it would not be where it was today. Appetites were born bit by bit. Once there was 1, there would be 2. They must not make a bad start. At the same time, in the Giant Spirit Star area, the giant race's number 1 Paragon, the Giant Spirit Venerable, had given the order for the entire race to be on a level 3 alert. They refused to interact with the evil spirit race, the Yaksha race, and the other races. If there was any movement, the entire army would suppress them. In short, the loss of the human race caused the entire universe to be in a state of panic. Back at the Paradise of Gods, none of them knew that the human race had been forced to retreat to the Black Tortoise Galaxy. When Yi Chen told them about it, they found it hard to believe. The mighty Black Tortoise Galaxy had a new master in such a short time. No matter how they looked at it, it sounded like a fantasy story, but they had to believe it. How could such a big matter be fake? The future of the human race is going to be tough. After a long silence, the Myriad Arrows monarch finally spoke. It's a pity that we're still too weak. Otherwise, we'd be able to contribute to the human race, Liu Di said hatefully. There's no hurry. War isn't something that can happen in a day or two. If the Demons Alliance wants to devour the entire human race, it will take them countless years and energy. There will be a time when we go into battle. Lu Wenjie had always been very calm and had a good mentality. Xu Jing, Murong Qingcheng, Du Guju, and others from Elysium also learned about this from Yi Chen. Du Guju clenched his fists tightly. In the past, he only wanted to compete with geniuses on the same level as him. But now, he felt that he was still too naive. Competition was fine, but one must have a lofty goal. Now, he had confirmed his goal, and that was to become one of the most dazzling people in the entire universe. It wasn't vanity, but only absolute strength could protect the human race and protect the place where he lived. He glanced at Yi Chen. In the future, they would be fighting side by side. At the same time, there would be countless geniuses fighting side by side. Just thinking about it made him excited. On the 10th level of the God of War Pagoda. A few years ago, Yi Chen already had the strength to pass the God of War Pagoda. However, he had never put it into action, mainly because he didn't want to attract too much attention and attract the attention of the alien races. Now, it didn't matter whether they paid attention or not. Although the war in the Black Tortoise Galaxy had ended, the bigger war was just beginning. Both sides would definitely think of ways to cause trouble, and assassinating the other side's geniuses was undoubtedly the most important thing. Passing the 10th level of the God of War Pagoda would reward a large amount of shunbi. As for the exact amount, Yi Chen had never heard of the exact number. After all, it had been countless years since someone had passed the 10th level. At present, Yi Chen had 15 million shunbi. If the reward for passing the 10th level was also 15 million shunbi, he would be able to exchange for a peak Heavenly King set. In terms of defense, peak Heavenly King set was equivalent to a low-level Emperor-grade armor. However, in terms of value, peak Heavenly King set was comparable to a mid-level Emperor-grade armor. This was because of the energy amplification effect. Under the 7th layer of Life and Death Realm, wearing a peak Heavenly King set would increase one's energy by 10 times. 10 times didn't seem like much, but the key was that the higher the energy, the easier it would be to use Emperor-grade offensive artifacts in the future. After all, who would complain about having too much energy? The 10th level's opponent was a Sword King of Demons. The Sword King of Demons had a heaven-defying battle strength. Its cultivation base was the same as Yi Chen's, 6th layer Life and Death Realm. However, the majority of titled monarchs were not its opponent. Otherwise, it wouldn't have become the 10th floor's gatekeeper. The first time Yi Chen entered the 10th floor, he was instantly killed. The second time, he withstood 8 moves and was cut into 2 on the 9th move. This time, Yi Chen's strength had undergone a heaven-defying transformation. Kai. A black light flickered, and the Sword King of Demons slashed at Yi Chen with its huge black sword. For ordinary battle emperors, the Sword King of Demons' sword speed was exceptionally frightening. Not to mention resisting, even parrying would be an extremely difficult task. However, in Yi Chen's eyes, the opponent's sword speed was simply too slow. Clang. With a casual wave of the Eternal Night Emperor sword, the opponent's huge black sword was immediately repelled. In the next moment, a sword light flickered, and a huge head flew into the air. 10th floor. Pass. Buzz. For no reason at all, the God of War Pagoda's resounding voice resounded, as if foretelling something. Not only the god of Paradise's god of war pagoda, but the demonic god Paradise, evil god Paradise, and every other Paradise's god of war pagoda reverberated with the resounding voice again and again. What? Someone passed the god of war pagoda? Who could it be? Could it be our demon's god-blessed queen? Let's go and see. Everyone walked towards the god of war pagoda. On the left side of the god of war pagoda's first floor, there was a stone tablet. The stone tablet was extremely tall, and it was densely packed with names. At a rough glance, there were at least 10,000 names. These were all the geniuses who had passed the god of war pagoda's 10th floor since ancient times. No one knew how long it had been since ancient times. Perhaps it had been hundreds of millions of years, or perhaps it had been billions of years, or even trillions of years. Anyway, no one knew when the paradise of gods had first existed, and no one knew when life had developed into civilization. Therefore, these tens of thousands of names were actually very rare. As they looked down, some people saw an additional name. Yi Chen. It's the paradise of God's genius sword king, Yi Chen. It's actually him. Only he can do it. In an instant, the news of Yi Chen passing the god of war pagoda's 10th floor was known by everyone. Very quickly, the news spread from the paradise to the various races. Chapter 12:17. The reward for passing the 10th level of the god of war pagoda was very high, beyond Yi Chen's expectations. There was a total of 10 million shunbi. With Yi Chen's 15 million shunbi, he had 25 million shunbi. He was only 5 million away from exchanging for a top-tier heavenly king set. One had to know that not only did the god of war pagoda reward shunbi, but the survival tower gave even more. Next, Yi Chen went to the survival tower. The 10th level of the survival tower was much more difficult than the 10th level of the god of war pagoda, but that was only relatively speaking. Yi Chen didn't find it difficult at all. As expected, the reward for the 10th level of the survival tower was double that of the god of war pagoda, 20 million. A total of 45 million shunbi. The paradise of gods had a total of 3 levels. The first level was for low-tier heavenly king sets, the second level was for mid-tier heavenly king sets, and the third level was for high-tier heavenly king sets. No one knew that there was a secret chamber on the third level, and there were very few top-tier heavenly king sets. Purple, green, silver, gold, and red. A total of 5 sets. Purple was noble and mysterious. Green was natural. Silver was cold and murderous. Gold was domineering and cold. Red was merciless and bloodthirsty. What surprised Yi Chen was that these 5 sets had many parts. Helmet, inner armor, outer armor, shoulder guards, arm guards, wrist guards, gloves, leg guards, battle skirt, battle boots, and weapons. There were more than a dozen parts in total, more than double the number of high-tier heavenly king sets. It was a dazzling sight. Without any hesitation, Yi Chen chose the silver set. It was a swordsman set. It had one more part than the other 4 sets. It was a pair of wings, a pair of sword wings. This pair of sword wings was completely made of sword blades and looked very sharp. When spread out, it was about 2 to 3 meters wide. Its name was Flying Sword Armor. The Flying Sky Sword Armor was 30 million divine coins without the Great Sword. Adding the Great Sword, it was 40 million divine coins. Of course, 10 million more was nothing to Yi Chen. With his current amount of divine coins and the speed at which he was earning divine coins, he simply couldn't spend them all. Leaving them here would be a waste. Swoosh, 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 one by one, the parts flew onto Yi Chen's body. Very soon, Yi Chen had become a swordsman wearing silver sword armor. He held a silver sword in his hand that flickered with light. This pair of sword wings is very powerful. Although Yi Chen had not refined the flying heaven sword armor into his body, he still had 90% control over it. With a thought, the sword wings on Yi Chen's back spread out and flapped rapidly. Kai 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 kai. Streaks of sword aura slashed across, hitting the walls of the secret pavilion, producing clanging sounds and sending sparks everywhere. In fact, whether he had the sword wings or not, it didn't affect Yi Chen much. The sword wings could make a warrior more agile, like a bird. However, Yi Chen had mastered space ultimacy, so he was more agile than a bird. Of course, it was more or less a bonus. Besides, the sword wings weren't just used to make a warrior more agile, they were also a means of attack. The treasured sword was the Flying Heaven Sword. Although it was just a part of a top Heavenly King set, and was only equivalent to a low-level Emperor stage artifact sword, once it was used together with the Flying Heaven Sword armor, its power would increase by thousands of times, comparable to a low-level Emperor stage artifact sword. Flying Heaven Sword and Flying Heaven Sword armor. With these, Yi Chen's battle power had increased by more than hundreds of times. If before, he could only contend with low-level Emperor warriors, and his defense was a bit weaker than them, then now, his battle power was already comparable to mid-level Emperor warriors. Of course, defense was still his weakness, and was still a bit weaker than low-level Emperor warriors. After all, he had a top Heavenly King set, and others also had Emperor stage artifact sword. Moreover, their cultivation was 2 heavenly layers higher than his, and their energy was much purer. I'll go into seclusion to refine the Flying Heaven Sword armor first. After exchanging for the Flying Heaven Sword armor, Yi Chen couldn't exert its full power at the moment. He needed to refine it into his body in order to completely control it. The second floor of the Tower of Time, Yi Chen ran his Jin Yuan to refine the Flying Heaven Sword armor. The higher the grade of the treasure, the more powerful it would be, and the more difficult it would be to refine it. The difficulty of refining a set would increase by thousands of times. After a period of time, Yi Chen had only refined 1/10 of the Flying Heaven Sword armor. Fortunately, there was no lack of time in the Tower of Time. 1 day in the outside world was 100 days in the Tower of Time. In the blink of an eye, 10 years in the Tower of Time was 1 month and 7 days in the outside world. Buzz. The Flying Heaven Sword armor was gradually refined into Yi Chen's body and integrated with the surface of Yi Chen's skin. Even the Flying Heaven Sword was refined into Yi Chen's right arm, becoming a sword symbol. Come out. With a flash of sword light, the Flying Heaven Sword appeared. The Flying Heaven Sword was very light and didn't feel much when held in the hand. After refining it into the body, it felt connected with the flesh and blood, just like a part of the body. Yi Chen performed the sword art at will, which was a bit stronger than the Eternal Night Emperor sword. Swish. With a thought, a pair of sword wings appeared on Yi Chen's back. The sword wings flapped like thousands of swords were waving. Originally, the sword wings were not real wings, but Yi Chen didn't feel that way. He felt that the sword wings were his own wings, just like how birds had their own wings. The sword wings flapped, and Yi Chen suddenly accelerated. With a dash, he was already far away. There was no difference between short-distance movement and teleportation. Good, with these two, I won't be at a disadvantage even if I have to face a middle-level emperor. Yi Chen believed that his defense was not as good as a beginner emperor, let alone a middle-level emperor. However, as long as the opponent couldn't hit him, he would have room to maneuver. If the opponent was a bit weaker, he might be injured instead. I wonder how Scarlet Wind Emperor and the others are doing. After refining the flying sword armor, Yi Chen decided to go out and ask around. At that time, the human race had been defeated, and the situation was too chaotic. He couldn't even protect himself, let alone know the safety of Scarlet Wind Emperor and the others. Leaving the Paradise of Gods, Yi Chen asked around and found out that the White Tiger Starfield had 10 military planets, which became the front line of the human race, just like the 10 military planets of the Black Tortoise Starfield. One of the 10 military planets, the White Blade Planet. On the White Blade Planet, the Grand Marshal was Marshal Golden Spear. 3 of the 10 marshals had died, but Marshal Golden Spear was still alive. Here, he might be able to find news of the Scarlet Wind Emperor and the others. You mean the Scarlet Wind Emperor? They are currently at the Boulder Barracks. After asking many people, Yi Chen finally got news of the 4. Fortunately, none of them died. This was undoubtedly a great fortune amidst the misfortune. After several years together, Yi Chen already considered them as true friends. The martial path was long, and it was too lonely to have a few good friends. Arriving at the Boulder Barracks, Yi Chen instantly found the Scarlet Wind Emperor. Yi Chen. The 4 were overjoyed to see Yi Chen. Like Yi Chen, They were worried about each other's safety. Seeing you again, it feels like a lifetime has passed. Luckily, we are all alive. The Scarlet Wind Emperor patted Yi Chen's shoulder, sighing. Haha, what are you worried about him for? He'll probably survive even if we die. The Fire Sparrow Emperor said carelessly. That's true, we can't even catch up to your survival ability. The four knew Yi Chen's strength very well. Chapter 12:18. After chatting for a few days, Yi Chen returned to the God Paradise. This time, he wanted to attack the 7th layer of Life and Death Realm. Although the Tower of Time could give him 100 times more time, he was very clear that once he reached the 7th layer of Life and Death Realm, one's comprehensive ability would increase drastically. Things that would take 100 years to comprehend before might only take 1 or 2 years at the 7th layer of Life and Death Realm. Of course, this was only for people with high comprehensive ability. Those with average comprehensive ability could stay in the paradise of God for dozens or even hundreds of years. At present, Yi Chen already had 99% certainty of attacking the 7th layer. His foundation could be considered stable. If he didn't attack now, when would he? I heard you want to attack the 7th layer. Peerless King Aju, who had somehow obtained this information, asked upon seeing Yi Chen. Right, it's time. Yi Chen faintly nodded. All right, you go first. I'll be right behind you. Aju didn't find Yi Chen's choice strange. Who didn't know the benefits of the Time Tower? Since Yi Chen had chosen to attack the 7th layer, he must have made a thorough plan. As for Aju, he still needed to stay for a while. At present, he was also a battle emperor and had reached the 10th floor of the War God Tower. However, compared to Yi Chen, he was far inferior. In the first stage, Yi Chen had won, and he was sincerely convinced. The second stage was the 7th layer of Life and Death Realm. Life and Death Realm was the starting point of the universe's experts. If one couldn't step over it, so what if one was a peerless genius? One's foundation would be far inferior to others. The only thing Yi Chen lacked was cultivation base. Breaking through to the 7th layer of Life and Death Realm would require tens of millions of yuan stones, or even more. Previously, when Yi Chen broke through to the 6th layer of Life and Death Realm, he had spent 7 to 8 million yuan stones. The 7th layer of Life and Death Realm would cost at least 10 times that amount. If it were Xu Jing, with her golden dragon physique, it would be several times, or even 10 times more than Yi Chen's. In the Tower of Time, Yi Chen was sitting there with crossed legs quietly. He was not in a hurry to break through to the next realm. Instead, he slowly revolved his Jin Yuan over and over again. This method was called the inertia method of breaking through to the next realm. It was just like a river. Once you blocked it, and then suddenly let it go, the river would flow 1,000 miles in an unstoppable manner. However, that would be too overbearing. If he succeeded, it would be fine, but if he failed, it would be very easy for his body to explode. Therefore, before that, Yi Chen had to gradually accelerate his Jin Yuan. After 1,080 cycles, Yi Chen began to accelerate greatly. A green light suddenly shone from his body, making Yi Chen look like a human-shaped jade. Dong! 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 Breaking through to the next realm was a huge burden on the body, especially on the heart. At this moment, the blood circulation would be thousands of times faster than normal. Without an undying body, it would be impossible to break through to the next realm. Of course, which Life and Death King didn't have an undying body? The only difference was the strength. According to the strength, the realm one could break through to was different. The reason why breaking through to the 7th layer of Life and Death Realm was even more difficult. It was also because he wanted to break through to the Anatta realm and condense the Emperor's imprint. Without the Emperor's imprint, there was no way to break through. However, this was not a problem for Yi Chen. He could have condensed the Emperor's imprint a year ago, but it was still not the right time to break through. Therefore, he suppressed it. Now, there was no need to suppress it. Buzz, 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 buzz. The Anatta realm was only a state where one could display their potential to the limit. It was an existence of nothingness. What Yi Chen wanted to do was to turn this nothingness into reality, which was the Emperor's imprint. Condensing the Emperor's imprint consumed a lot of mental and soul power. Fortunately, Yi Chen didn't lack either. Gradually, a transparent imprint took shape in Yi Chen's Sea of Soul. This imprint looked like characters, but also like a human. As it took shape, the Sea of Soul became even more stable. Of course, it was not only the Sea of Soul that was stable, but also the potential. In the past, one needed to enter the Anatta realm to burst out with the strongest potential. However, after condensing the Emperor's imprint, one could burst out with the strongest potential with every movement. This was the benefit of the Emperor's imprint. After an unknown amount of time, the Emperor's imprint was completely formed. Following this, Yi Chen's body was like a surging ocean. Even if he didn't purposely break through to the next realm, he would naturally enter the 7th layer of life and death realm. At this time, Yi Chen's foundation had already been formed. Breaking through to the next realm was no longer a surprise. Time flowed like water. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed in the outside world. Yi Chen had yet to come out of the time tower. Another month passed. On this day, in a certain space on the 2nd floor of the time tower, a boundless aura soared into the sky. This aura was too frightening, like countless sharp swords. Ordinary life and death kings would immediately collapse upon contact with this aura. Even powerful 6th layer life and death kings couldn't withstand the impact of this aura. Only 7th layer life and death titled monarchs could contend against it. However, this was merely the aura. If one were to directly face the source of the aura, Jin Yuan, they would also suffer. If a powerful sword emperor or sword emperor were here, they would definitely recognize that this was not ordinary Jin Yuan, but Sword Yuan, the strongest sword energy of a sword artist. With Sword Yuan, one's destructive power would increase by tenfold. Ordinary objects that couldn't be sliced apart could be sliced apart with a single slash. Even the astral Yuan of an evil spirit body king was somewhat inferior to Sword Yuan. The one releasing this aura was precisely Yi Chen. At this moment, he had already broken through to the 7th layer of life and death realm. What made him pleasantly surprised was that his Jin Yuan had finally transformed into Sword Yuan. He didn't know why it would transform into Sword Yuan, although there were signs of it before. Perhaps, it had something to do with Yi Chen's cultivation technique breaking through to the peak heaven grade. Perhaps it was because of the sword intent, or perhaps it was because of sword domain. Regardless, this was indeed Sword Yuan, without a trace of falsehood. Apart from Sword Yuan, the ones with the greatest increase were Soul Power and Jin Yuan. His Soul Power suddenly increased by tenfold, and his Jin Yuan by nearly 50 times. Correspondingly, Yi Chen's consumption of Yuan stones was also an astronomical figure, no less than 300 million Yuan stones. This was Yi Chen. If it were any other 6th layer life and death king without any background, they probably wouldn't have enough Yuan stones to break through. Is this Sword Yuan? Yi Chen opened his palm, and a strand of Jin Yuan shot out. This strand of Jin Yuan was extremely sharp, like a soft sword. It swam in Yi Chen's palm, issuing kai-kai sounds. Puff. With a casual wave of his hand, this strand of Sword Yuan instantly shot out. Its speed was countless times faster than Jin Yuan, and it was simply like a flying sword. It should be known that this was merely Sword Yuan, and not a sword art that was executed with Sword Yuan. From now on, I can be considered to have the capital to protect my life. Yi Chen didn't know what realm his battle strength had reached, but he knew that middle-level emperor warriors were no longer his opponents. In terms of defense, he was stronger than low-level emperor warriors. Of course, he was still a bit weaker than middle-level emperor warriors, but the gap wasn't that big. Sword Yuan made up for the gap of 1 layer, but in terms of offense, middle-level emperor warriors wouldn't be able to catch up to him. Chapter 12:19. Buzz. Right at this moment, a powerful force suddenly appeared, and Yi Chen was forcibly sent into the void. When he reappeared, he was already on the God Star. Sure enough, after reaching the 7th sky of life and death realm, one will immediately be expelled from the God Paradise. Yi Chen was not surprised, as he had long since prepared for this. Swish. Although the gravity on the God Star was extremely powerful, around 1/10 of that of an ordinary white dwarf star, Yi Chen's sword Yuan was even more powerful. With a burst of sword Yuan, Yi Chen flew out of the atmosphere. In Vermilion Bird Starfield, there was an unknown stronghold. This stronghold was located on a desolate planet. There was no heat, no plants, no water, only strong winds and sandstorms, as well as frightening violent lightning. This planet was called Desolate Star, and it was an uninhabited place. There was not a single planet in its vicinity. As far as the eye could see, the universe was pitch black, with 1 or 2 stars flickering occasionally. At the center of the Desolate Star was a huge palace shrouded in a dark halo. If someone came here and saw this palace, they would certainly be astonished. Scanning with soul power from the outside wouldn't be able to discover this palace. This palace was clearly shrouded in a concealing array that could isolate soul power. Inside the palace, there was a huge conference room. At this moment, both sides of the conference table were filled with people. At a glance, there were at least 30 people. These people were not from the human race or the beast race. They were all powerful warriors from the demon race, the evil spirit race, and the Yaksha race. Their cultivation bases were all at the 8th sky of the life and death realm. Judging from their auras, the weaker ones were much weaker than Green Boring Emperor, but the stronger ones were much stronger. Devil Hand Emperor, why have you gathered us? The third person on the left was a Green Spirit Emperor. His finger knocked on the table as he asked. Upon hearing this, everyone turned to look at the Devil Hand Sovereign. They were the spies planted by the upper echelons of their race in the 4 major lifestar domains. They wouldn't gather together easily in case they were wiped out. After all, the 4 major lifestar domains were now the 3 major lifestar domains. They were like rats. Once they were exposed, they would only face death. Naturally, death was already a very good ending for them. They were only afraid that they would be soul-searched by some emperors or quasi-venerables with powerful soul force. The Devil Hand Emperor cleared his throat. I have gathered all of you here for an important matter. I believe all of you have heard about it from your own sources. The human race has an amazing genius. This genius has only been in the paradise of gods for a few decades, but he has already passed the 10th level of the God of War pagoda. You're talking about that Yi Chen of the human race, right? I've heard from the higher-ups that this child is indeed a scourge. If we don't get rid of him, we'll have another opponent in the future. An emperor of the Yaksha clan said. Opponent? The Devil Hand Emperor sneered. It seems like your higher-ups haven't paid enough attention to this child. I can say that if we let him grow, the human race will have another paragon in the near future. Moreover, he has a high chance of becoming a super paragon. Paragon? Super paragon? Aren't you exaggerating a little too much? It's not like we haven't seen geniuses before. Some of them aren't that much weaker than him, but less than 1 in 100 can become a paragon. All of them are at the peak emperors or quasi-venerables. It's not that easy to become a paragon, let alone a super paragon. The evil vulture emperor of the evil spirit race retorted. The Devil Hand Emperor didn't even look at him. He continued, of course, I'm not that observant. The one who thinks that this child has a chance of becoming a super paragon is the Shaman Demon Emperor of the Demons. Shaman Demon Emperor. Hearing these 3 words, the whole scene quieted down. The Shaman Demon bloodline was the most special bloodline of the demons. It was so powerful that it could be said to be heaven-defying. However, the heavens seemed to be apprehensive of this bloodline, and had placed shackles on it. The Shaman Demon bloodline would never be able to enter the ranks of paragons, and could only reach the 8th layer of life and death realm. However, it would be a grave mistake to look down on the Shaman Demon bloodline. Liches were innately sensitive to time. After entering the life and death realm, their time profound would reach at least 30% completion. This made the Shaman Demon bloodline invincible in the same realm. Even among the demons, Dark Witch and Dark Goddess were not the opponents of the Shaman Demon bloodline within the same realm. Only the legendary Great Demon King bloodline seemed to be able to suppress the Shaman Demon bloodline. After reaching the 8th layer of life and death realm, only one person could be conferred the title of Shaman Demon Emperor, and this person was undoubtedly the strongest of the Shaman Demon bloodline. At present, The shaman demon emperor of the demons was already close to 100,000 years old. He was an old antique who would face the end of his lifespan at any time. His prophecies were like gold and jade in the eyes of the demons. This was because the shaman demon emperor's attainments in time profound had already reached the pinnacle. As long as he had some information about a certain person, he could immediately deduce some fragments of that person's future. Of course, due to his cultivation base, the shaman demon emperor couldn't deduce the future of a paragon. Once, the shaman demon emperor forcibly tried to deduce the future of a human paragon and immediately suffered a backlash. It took several thousand years for him to gradually recover. Since it's the shaman demon emperor's deduction, it shouldn't be far from the truth. The crowd could choose not to believe the devil hand emperor, but they couldn't not believe the shaman demon emperor. Although the shaman demon emperor of the demons wasn't a paragon, he had the strength of a paragon. He could be said to be one of the strongest paragons in history. Even the shaman demon emperor believes that this kid has a high chance of becoming a paragon. Then, this kid must die. The Greenman emperor revealed a killing intent. Right, this kid deserves to die. If we don't kill him, our hearts won't be at ease. The crowd was in a heated discussion. The devil hand emperor signaled for the crowd to quieten down. This kid must die, but we must have a meticulous plan. This plan can only succeed and not fail. Otherwise, the difficulty of assassinating him next time will increase by 10 or even 100 times. We might even be annihilated. Devil Hand Emperor, what plan do you have? Just say it. Let's listen. The Yaksha Emperor said impatiently. All right. The Devil Hand Emperor explained his plan in an orderly manner. Devil Domain, Lick Planet. This was a level 9 life planet, the headquarters of the Lick race. On top of the heaven-reaching tower, a grey-haired old man stood with his hands behind his back. This old man was very old. Although his hair wasn't completely white, his face was full of wrinkles. His flesh was about to fall off, and his face was full of age spots. His turbid eyes weren't focused, and there were no teeth in his mouth. This was an old man with one foot in the grave. However, no one would look down on him. As he stood there, the time around him seemed to have stopped. That moment was like an eternity. He was the strongest expert of the Lick race, the Shaman Demon Emperor. He was also the leader of the Shaman Demon race. Not only does he have a high chance of becoming a paragon, but he will definitely become a paragon. He might even surpass a paragon. However, I can't say it. If I say it, it will bring a greater disaster to the demons. The demons roam the universe. Their biggest opponent is here. Chapter 1220. Nobody knew what Shaman Demon King had seen. In fact, even he himself didn't know what he had seen. He only knew that his whole body was trembling at that moment. It was the kind of trembling one would feel when facing a superior. That kind of power was simply undefiable. Then, the whole world started to warn him, as if he had predicted some kind of fate. The so-called fate of the heavens must not be divulged. This was not an empty saying. It wasn't that revealing the secrets of the heavens would result in immediate punishment. One must know that the future wasn't unchanging. Revealing the secrets of the heavens was equivalent to changing the future to a certain extent. In other words, revealing the secrets of the heavens would result in a different outcome, and that outcome would be even more disadvantageous to you. This was the rule of fate, the supreme rule of fate. Shaman Demon King couldn't directly state his prediction. He could only warn the upper echelons of the demons that this kid was very dangerous and had a great chance of becoming a supreme. He believed that saying this would attract enough attention. This is fate, this is fate. Whether or not this kid can be killed will be the turning point of the demon's fate. Shaman Demon King was very clear that changing fate would be very difficult. Killing this kid wouldn't be a matter of a day, but a long time. At the same time, in the palace meeting on Wildstar, the plan had already been decided. The plan was quite simple. Each clan would send out 3 Emperor-level experts to kill Yi Chen together, not giving him any chance to escape. They were quite confident that not to mention a mere 6th-layer life and death realm genius, even if it was a wily high-level Emperor-level expert, he would still die without a doubt. Yi Chen didn't know that a huge net was quietly covering him. After leaving the god paradise, he headed straight for Vermilion Birdstar region's Flamestar planet. With the star transfer array and Dejianghao, Yi Chen arrived at Flamestar Flower City in a mere week. Master, the target has arrived at Flame City. On a desolate planet near Flame City, a human king bowed and reported. Very good. Continue monitoring. Remember, don't alert him. As soon as he leaves Flame City, immediately report. The grim middle-aged man with a horn on each shoulder was the Emperor of the Demons, the Iron Horn Emperor. In terms of strength, even Demonic Hand Emperor was not his opponent. However, strength didn't represent status. In human territory, he had to listen to Demonic Hand Emperor. This subordinate understands. After speaking, the human king's figure suddenly disappeared. Clearly, it was only a projection. Not only on this planet, but on the planets near and far around Flamestar, there were also alien race emperors hiding there. Every once in a while, someone would send a message through a projection. This way, none of Yi Chen's movements could escape their eyes and ears. All they had to do was wait patiently. The current Sparrowflower City was extremely prosperous. Although the Yi family and the Dustfall Sword sect were the absolute overlords of Sparrowflower City, they didn't deliberately suppress the other powers. Instead, they often cooperated with other powers. Of course, not every power could cooperate with the Yi family and the Dustfall Sword sect. It was already good enough that those notorious powers hadn't been eradicated. Prosperity and fairness made Sparkle City's reputation spread far and wide. Many small families were willing to move to Sparkle City. In other main cities, they were like pieces of meat, but in Sparkle City, they were protected. After reaching the seventh sky of life and death realm, his comprehensive ability had increased by 100-fold. Some of the things that were hard to understand in the past could now be comprehended with just a bit of time and a bit of thought. So it's more natural to use Space Upanishad this way. Yi Chen started with momentary glory. The same material, but different people made it, so the effect would be different. The Space Profound was like a material. Before the seventh sky of life and death realm, Yi Chen had been able to raise his momentary glory to the 4th rank, which was already quite good. But now, Yi Chen was no longer satisfied with the momentary glory. Of course, this was mainly due to the fact that his space ultimacy had improved a lot once again. He had successfully broken through to the Great Accomplishment Realm and was only a step away from the Great Accomplishment Realm. Standing beside the lake in the City Lord's mansion, Yi Chen faced the wind and swung his sword again and again, comprehending the connection between the sword and space. If someone were to come here, they would definitely be dumbfounded. Within a radius of 1,000 feet around Yi Chen, there were sword lights everywhere. These sword lights seemed to have come out of the void, interweaving into a web of death without any loopholes. 3 days later, the net of death shrank from 1,000 zhong to 100 zhong. A week later, it had shrunk to 100 feet. 1 month. 10 feet. Done. Lightning flickered in Yi Chen's eyes as he slashed out with his sword. Puff. The frightening web of death condensed into a single point and shot out in a straight line. Hundreds of millions of li away from the Flamestar, an ordinary planet was suddenly dismembered like a butcher dismembering an ox. However, the speed of the process was 1,000,000 times faster. The current momentary glory has almost reached its limit. Everything had its limit. For example, a piece of tofu, no matter how it was cooked, could not be cooked to the point of being a delicacy. No matter how powerful the space ultimacy was, it was only a profound. It could not be infinitely powerful. 4th rank was its limit. Even if the space ultimacy reached the Great Accomplishment Realm, it would at most be a high-rank 4th rank martial skill. 4th rank martial skills were also divided into beginner, ordinary, mid, high, and then extreme. However, after the space ultimacy reached the Great Accomplishment Realm, the time ultimacy was another matter. Next, Yi Chen put all his effort into the second 4th rank martial art. Sun Essence Extreme Manifestation and True Inferno Sword were both extreme 3rd rank martial skills. It seemed to be a step away from 4th rank martial skills, but the difference in power was more than 1,000 times. A third-rank martial skill was a third-rank martial skill. It could not become a fourth-rank martial skill. Yi Chen did not plan to spend time on the Sun Essence Extreme Manifestation and True Inferno Sword. Now, he had to prepare to create a supreme martial skill. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth. Yi Chen planned to use these 5 profound to create a martial skill. Of course, he had to do it step by step. If he really integrated these 5 profound into a martial skill, it would be a supreme martial skill. Let's start with metal, water, fire, and earth. Yi Chen did not have much experience with 4th-rank martial skills. Fortunately, the 5 profound of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were the foundation he often used to create martial skills. It should be easier. This time, it took a lot of time. Half a year later. Go. Above the lake, Yi Chen casually slashed out with his sword. Boom. Like a superstar exploding, a burning lava sword light slashed out, and the whole Spark City flickered. So hot. Yi Chen's expression was a little strange. Just now, he did not use sword intent or sword essence, but when he slashed out, all the water in the lake dried up. Chenna, what happened? After a while, Yi Tianhao and the others came. Just now, the movement of that sword was too big, it was hard not to know. Nothing, I am practicing the sword. Yi Chen smiled and put away his sword. Oh my, the lake has dried up. Yi Xian blinked his eyes. He knew that his brother never used any sword intent or energy when practicing the sword, it was purely sword skills. Maybe it caused a chain reaction. Although this lake was just an ordinary lake, there were countless spirit formations covering it. Yet, a single sword strike had easily dried up the lake. It must have inadvertently made great progress. Chapter 12:21. Although this sword had not reached the phenomenal stage yet, Yi Chen had already given it a name, the Doomsday Meteor Sword. This sword was like a burning meteor streaking across the sky, looking like the end of the world. Of course, when the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were all present, this sword would become the real Doomsday Sword. Currently, it only contained the 4 profound meanings of metal, water, fire, and earth. The Doomsday Meteor Sword had a much better future than the Momentary Brilliance. Even if it only had 4 profound meanings, it could reach the peak of the 4th revolution, while the limit of the Momentary Brilliance was the advanced stage of the 4th revolution. But for now, the Momentary Brilliance was more useful. The Doomsday Meteor Sword had just reached the initial stage. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another half a year had passed. It had been more than a year since Yi Chen left the Paradise of Gods. In this 1 year, the members of the Paradise of Gods had improved a lot. However, the ones who improved the most were Arju, Duguju, and Shu Jing. Arju's strength was already unstoppable in the Paradise of Gods. Of course, the lifeless swordsman, Lung Feifen, was not far behind. He was the only one who could compete with Arju. As for Duguju and Shu Jing, they were the latecomers. It would take them a long time to catch up to the 2 of them. If the era when Yi Chen was in the Paradise of Gods was the Golden Era, then after Yi Chen left, the Paradise of Gods was the Platinum Era. It was even better than the Golden Era. After all, although the monster Yi Chen was gone, there were a few more top experts, and the number of experts had increased. It was worth mentioning that the Goddess of Gods from the Demonic Paradise had also passed the 10th level of the God of War Pagoda. It seemed that Yi Chen's existence had stimulated her improvement. The potential of the Goddess of Darkness was not something an ordinary person could compare to. In the past, there was no one stronger than her, so the pressure was not great. Now that there was a Yi Chen, she knew that there was always someone stronger than her. It would be strange if she did not improve greatly. In an era with many geniuses, there would be even stronger geniuses. This was an unchanging law of the universe. Yi Chen was not very concerned about the Paradise of Gods. With Arju and Lung Feifen around, Duguju, Shu Jing, Murong Qingcheng, and the others were all growing rapidly, there was no need for him to worry about them. He should worry about the other paradises. Of course, the other paradises could not be underestimated. Although the Paradise of God was at its peak, the other paradises would also produce new geniuses. At most, the paradise of God would have a slight advantage. In this half a year, Yi Chen finally comprehended the doomsday meteor sword to great perfection. Even if he did not draw his sword, the sword intent of the doomsday meteor sword was not something that ordinary sovereign personages could withstand. Whoosh! On this day, Yi Chen left planet Flaming Flame and rushed to the rock barracks on planet White Tiger Starzone's White Blade. He had arranged to meet with the Scarlet Wind the Arch and the others next week. Master, the target has left planet Flaming Flame. On the dozen or so planets around planet Flaming Flame, a dozen or so projections appeared and reported the latest news to the foreign sovereign personages. H, you're finally willing to come out. This time, you won't be able to return. The most outstanding genius of the human race is about to fall. Just thinking about it makes me excited. We, a dozen sovereign personages, assassinate a junior. There's no chance of failure. In the starry sky, Yi Chen had just taken out De Jianghao when he sensed danger. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Dozens of sovereign personages appeared out of thin air in all directions. There were demons, yakshas, evil spirits, and green men. There were a total of 13 of them. Among these 13, the weakest was a low-level peak sovereign personage, and the strongest was a mid-level peak sovereign personage. It was not hard for Yi Chen to imagine that his whereabouts were definitely being monitored. Otherwise, he would not have been surrounded the moment he left planet Flaming Flame. Those who came did not have good intentions, and those who had good intentions did not come. A sovereign personage had appeared in the human race's territory, and with great fanfare at that. It seemed like the higher echelons of the foreign races had already included him in their must-kill list. Sneering, Yi Chen said, "Everyone, you've waited for a long time." He was not afraid. On the contrary, he was somewhat looking forward to it. Instant of Glory and Doomsday Meteor Sword had never been used before. This was the perfect opportunity to see how powerful they were. Yi Chen's calmness made Devil Hand Emperor faintly crease his brows. The situation seemed to have changed. No matter who it was, encountering dozens of sovereign personages at once would certainly produce a trace of alarm. However, he couldn't see any negative emotions on Yi Chen's body. It was as if he didn't care about his situation at all. Or perhaps, he had a certain degree of certainty in escaping. As for whether or not Yi Chen had the strength to contend against them, Devil Hand Emperor didn't even think about it. What a joke! A seventh-layer life and death brat, no matter how much of a genius he was, couldn't contend against 13 sovereign personages at once, unless he had the strength of a high-grade sovereign personage. Moreover, even if he had the strength of a high-grade sovereign personage, they would still dare to clash head-on. Kid, to die by our hands is your honor. Last time, we only sent 7 sovereign personages to assassinate human geniuses. This time, we sent twice as many. The Green Man race's sovereign personage calmly looked at Yi Chen. Is that so? But this time, you're likely to return empty-handed. If there was a high-grade sovereign personage among them, Yi Chen might have thought of a way to escape. Unfortunately, they didn't. Oh, quite confident. The Yaksha race's sovereign personage sneered. As far as he was concerned, all geniuses were confident. Even in the face of despair, they wouldn't despair. However, this kind of confidence excited him instead. Turning confidence into despair was a wonderful process. Killing the opponent in one go was not that interesting. Devil Hand Sovereign, what's wrong? The Iron Horn Emperor, who was familiar with Devil Hand Sovereign's character, felt a little strange. Devil Hand Sovereign had always done things swiftly and decisively, but now, he saw a trace of hesitation in his eyes. Nothing. Devil Hand Sovereign smiled, dispelling the doubt in his heart. No matter how he speculated, he didn't think that Yi Chen could escape alive. The possibility was absolutely zero. Kill. With a wave of his hand, Devil Hand Sovereign launched an attack. The encirclement of 13 sovereign personages was no small matter. Yi Chen didn't dare to ignore it. After all, although his attack was powerful, his defense was much weaker. He was only a little stronger than a low-level sovereign personage. Momentary brilliance, let me see your real power. Yi Chen's figure flickered. Compared to before, Yi Chen's movement was even more erratic. The void didn't seem to be a hindrance to him at all. Other than the fact that he couldn't teleport, his agility had already surpassed a medium-level sovereign personage. Go! The flying heaven sword waved. Countless sword lights fused together and condensed into a single point, flying towards the peak Green Man race's low-level sovereign personage. This sword was unbelievably fast. However, its profoundness wasn't limited to speed. Just as the peak Green Man race's low-level sovereign personage was about to teleport, the sword light suddenly exploded, turning into a death net that enveloped the opponent. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The peak Green Man race's low-level sovereign personage was instantly cut into thousands of pieces. Even a low-level sovereign personage's armor couldn't block it. Chapter 1222. What? Demonic Hand Emperor, Iron Horn Emperor, and the rest were incomparably shocked. Killing a peak novice emperor with one sword strike was something even high-level emperors couldn't accomplish. After all, a low-level emperor-grade armor was not that easy to break. At the very least, 80 to 90% of the damage would be blocked, and the remaining 10 to 20% wouldn't be enough to kill a peak novice emperor. Demonic Hand Emperor finally understood what he had been worrying about. Yi Chen was 100 times, 1,000 times more powerful than he had imagined. He was no longer an ordinary peerless genius, but an unprecedented genius. Only those famous geniuses in history could compare to him. It should be known that his cultivation base was only at the 7th layer of life and death realm, and he seemed to have advanced in the past 2 years. If he reached the peak of the 7th layer, wouldn't even high-level emperors be his opponent? If he reached the 8th layer, who under the Supremes would be able to contend against him? Once one entered the 8th layer of life and death realm, one would be invincible under Supremes. It was not that there were none, but it was simply too rare. Demon race's Shaman Demon Emperor was one, and the strongest genius of Shaman Demon race was also counted. In the entire universe, the number of known such characters did not exceed 10. And this was not counting all of them. If one were to count all of them, there would be only 5. However, compared to Yi Chen, Shaman Demon lineage would never be able to reach the Supreme's realm, while Yi Chen didn't have any restrictions. In fact, Yi Chen's attack wasn't powerful enough to destroy a low-level Emperor-grade armor. This was mainly because when the Destruction Sword Intent and Immortal Sword Intent were both at the 7th step, they could resonate with each other, greatly increasing one's cultivation speed. Currently, the Destruction Sword Intent and Immortal Sword Intent had both reached the late 7th step, which was much more powerful than the early 7th step. In terms of defense, the Immortal Sword Intent could be said to be impervious to 10,000 evils. It could be said to be the bane of evil spirit races' evil arts. On the other hand, the Destruction Sword Intent's attack was extremely frightening. It could forcibly destroy things that were originally indestructible, and could even transmit sword chi into the opponent's body through the armor. The current Destruction Sword Intent truly had the aura of destroying all living things. Aside from that, the Moment of Glory itself had a strange ability. Although Yi Chen knew that the nature of the Moment of Glory would change after mastering space law, he did not expect it to have such a change. It was similar to the spacetime cutter, or at least it had the initial state of the spacetime cutter. Kill him. Devil Hand Sovereign's eyes erupted with a powerful killing intent. This time, even if he had to sacrifice half of his emperors, he still wanted Yi Chen to fall. Kill. The Iron Horn Emperor was the strongest among them. He punched out, and the wind from his fist transformed into a huge horn, blasting towards Yi Chen. This was the ultimate art he was famous for, breaking hardness fist. Just as Yi Chen was about to dodge, his body suddenly froze. It turned out that the two sovereigns closest to him had each released their own domains. Their domains overlapped, but not only did they not cancel each other out, they instead strengthened each other, making it impossible for Yi Chen to dodge in an instant. Our overlapping waves domain isn't something to be trifled with. On Yi Chen's left and right were the two sovereigns of the Yaksha clan. They were called Yi Jianghuang and Yi High Emperor respectively. Their domains were exactly the same, called Overlapping Waves Domain. As the name suggested, this domain could be overlapped, amplifying the power by 4 times. When these two brothers joined hands, even a high-level sovereigns would find it hard to advance or retreat, let alone Yi Chen. In the blink of an eye, the Iron Horn Emperor's breaking hardness fist had already arrived in front of Yi Chen. If this fist were to hit its target, it would be enough to pierce through Yi Chen. Clang. Although he couldn't dodge, it didn't mean that Yi Chen would give up without a fight. Raising his flying heaven sword, Yi Chen slashed at the horn-like fist wind. The black sword light was cold and mournful. Boom. An extremely violent shock wave radiated out in all directions, and Yi Chen was blown away. The breaking hardness fist was the Iron Horn Emperor's unique skill after all, so it wasn't that easy to resist. Moreover, under the suppression of the overlapping wave's domain, Yi Chen couldn't perform his unique skill in a short time. However, the current him wasn't the same as before. With the flying heaven sword armor, the protective sword intent, and the immortal power, he had the confidence to face high-level sovereigns, not to mention the Iron Horn Emperor, who was a peak mid-level sovereigns. After flying back for tens of thousands of miles, Yi Chen stopped his retreat. He actually blocked it. The Iron Horn Emperor looked at his fist and then at Yi Chen. His opponent's attack was powerful, but his defense wasn't bad either. The scattered fist wind had clearly hit Yi Chen. Kill. As soon as the Iron Horn Emperor's attack ended, the other sovereigns of the pagan clan attacked. They were like bombers, attacking Yi Chen repeatedly. Dazzling energy waves exploded crazily, as if planets were exploding. Retreating again and again, blood leaked out of the corner of Yi Chen's mouth. It would be a lie to say that the combined attack of 12 sovereigns of the pagan clan was not powerful. It was already not easy for Yi Chen to defend until now. Of course, this was also thanks to the immortal power. Impossible. He is only at the 7th layer of life and death realm. How could he defend until now? Defending for a long time is bound to fail. I don't believe he has much immortal power left. Right, he can't defend. Let's exhaust him to death. While Devil Hand Emperor and the rest were shocked, their killing intent toward Yi Chen also intensified. Raising his head, Yi Chen looked at the 12 and said indifferently, "Courtesy demands reciprocation. Now, it's my turn to attack." Holding the flying heaven sword with both hands, Yi Chen sucked in a deep breath and raised the sword high. "This sword is something I've prepared for you guys." As he exhaled, Yi Chen's sword heavily chopped down. Nobody could describe the power and splendor of this sword. Several 100 million li of the pitch-black cosmos suddenly erupted with a frightening flame. Unlike in Inferno City, he didn't need to use his sword yuan and sword intent. But here, he didn't need any restrictions, and could only wave his sword to his heart's content. Poochie. Flames flickered, and a several million li long sword light burst out like a fire dragon traversing the cosmos. Crackle. The meteor sword light was millions of miles long, and with a flash, it could travel hundreds of millions of miles. Then, it flew even further away. Everywhere it went, stars exploded. Some ordinary stars were tens of millions of miles away from the sword light, but they couldn't withstand the pull of the Doomsday Meteor Sword. After a slight tremble, they suddenly exploded. Doomsday Meteor Sword was like a true Doomsday Sword. It triggered a chain reaction in the cosmos. Of course, this sword's consumption was also enormous, 100 times more than Instant of Glory. 1/3 of Yi Chen's Zhen Yuan was used up. This was also the reason why he didn't use this sword art rashly. It consumed too much Zhen Yuan. Poochie. 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 Devil Hand Emperor and the rest froze in place. In the next moment, 7 peak low-level Emperor Realm experts exploded into bloody mists, turning into flying ashes. Devil Hand Emperor and the other 4 mid-level Emperor Realm experts spurted out blood, looking dispirited. This sword strike had also destroyed their fighting spirit. Chapter 1223. The power of the Doomsday Meteor Sword after reaching great accomplishment was very close to a 4th Revolution peak sword technique, while Momentary Brilliance was only a 4th Revolution middle-tier sword technique. The difference between the two was huge. Of course, Yi Chen didn't expect the Doomsday Meteor Sword to be so terrifying. Before he used it, He thought it would be good enough to kill 3 or 4 martial emperors who had just reached the peak. The plan failed. Let's go. The 5 people who survived lost all their courage. To assassinate Yi Chen, only high-level emperors could do it, and they needed 3 or more, or at least 1 peak-level emperor. If they relied on themselves, it would be suicide. The 5 of them split up and teleported in different directions. Yi Chen could not teleport, so he could not make all 5 of them stay. However, he could make 1 or 2 stay. Without hesitation, Yi Chen once again executed the Doomsday Meteor Sword. Millions of miles of sword aura flashed, and a mid-tier emperor warrior fell. After swallowing a Zhen Yuan replenishing pellet, Yi Chen continued to use Doomsday Meteor Sword. This time, it was aimed at Devil Hand Emperor. He could tell that Devil Hand Emperor was the leader of this group of emperors. Killing him would at least make the other emperors in the human territory stop for a while. Devil Hand Sovereign was already gravely injured. Although the inextinguishable energy could instantly heal any injuries, it was still insufficient against the sword light that contained the destruction sword intent. One had to know that Yi Chen's destruction sword intent had reached the late 7th rank, which was equivalent to an ordinary late 8th rank sword intent. This was in terms of power, and an ordinary 8th rank sword intent wouldn't have the destructive nature of the destruction sword intent. The sword light that tore apart the universe arrived. How could the Devil Hand Sovereign block it? He couldn't evade it either. The sword light was incomparably huge and had already locked onto him. Puff! A bloody mist erupted as Devil Hand Sovereign was vaporized into nothingness, leaving behind only his weapon and armor. As for the Ironhorn Emperor and the other 2, they had already escaped to a faraway place. Even if Yi Chen could teleport, he would not be able to catch up with them. After collecting the spoils of war, Yi Chen acted as if nothing had happened and rushed toward the nearest star teleportation formation. In a secret realm in the Vermilion Bird star field, the Ironhorn Emperor and the other 2 appeared at the same time. Ironhorn Emperor, what should we do next? The Ghost Spirit Emperor of the evil spirit race looked at the Ironhorn Emperor. The Ironhorn Emperor muttered, "Killing this kid is beyond our ability. We can only report to the upper echelons and ask them to send high-level or even peak-level emperors. Will the higher-ups agree?" Although there were many high-level and top-level beast sovereigns, they were not fools. If they ran into the territory of the human race, it was very likely that they would be discovered. Not to mention top-level beast sovereigns, even quasi-venerables or ordinary supreme beings would not be able to leave alive if they were discovered in the territory of the human race. The upper echelons of the human race were not to be trifled with. To be honest, the Ironhorn Emperor wasn't willing to stay in the human race's territory. He was sure that the human race's experts would have noticed some clues at the place where they had fought. After all, the higher one's cultivation base was, the more obvious the demonic attribute would be. It wouldn't dissipate even after several months. Some powerful quasi-sovereigns could temporarily reverse the flow of time and observe what had happened not long ago. You don't have to worry about that. The more amazing his performance is, the more the higher-ups won't tolerate him. Compared to that, sacrificing a few high-level or even peak-level emperors is nothing. It was none of his business. As long as he didn't throw his life away, it was fine, the Ironhorn Emperor thought. You're right. The other Yaksha Emperor nodded. White Blade Planet, Boulder Barracks, Yi Chen, you're the last one. Scarlet Wind Emperor and the other 3 welcomed him. Congratulations. Yi Chen was slightly bewildered before cupping his fists and congratulating. It turned out that Scarlet Wind Emperor had already entered the 8th layer of life and death realm. After the 6th layer, each step was like a whole new world. Countless titled monarchs were stuck at the 7th layer, unable to make any progress. Now that Scarlet Wind Emperor had entered the 8th layer, not only did his battle strength increase by many folds, his comprehension had also improved. His improvement speed was even faster than titled monarchs. Same to you. Scarlet Wind Emperor was originally planning to be proud of himself, but when he discovered that Yi Chen's cultivation base was at the 7th layer, he promptly shut his mouth. Yi Chen was already so powerful at the 6th layer, comparable to an emperor. At the 7th layer, Scarlet Wind Emperor reckoned that he wouldn't be Yi Chen's opponent. If he was a genius, then Yi Chen was a genius among geniuses. Indeed, comparisons were odious. How did you improve so fast? Fire Sparrow Emperor was thoroughly convinced by Yi Chen. The latter had only been in the god paradise for about 20 years at the very most, and yet, he had already entered the 7th layer of life and death realm in 20 years. This was simply unheard of. With Yi Chen's cultivation speed, it would only take him 100 or 200 years to reach the 8th layer. As for the 9th layer, it was quite possible that he would reach the 9th layer within 1,000 years. Of course, she also knew that one thing was another. Some people's improvement speed was fast in the early stages, but it would gradually slow down in the later stages. There were only a few who could become supremes within 1,000 years. However, without a doubt, Yi Chen was the one with the most hope. This is truly smooth sailing. You and Scarlet Wind Emperor's strength has greatly increased, and your chances of obtaining an Emperor Spirit Root have increased. Snow Air Emperor said with a faint smile. Emperor Spirit Root. Yi Chen had never heard of this kind of spirit grass. Snow Air Emperor explained, reaching the 8th layer from the 7th layer is 10 times harder than reaching the 7th layer from the 6th layer. Without a good foundation, it would be impossible for one's whole life. Therefore, as long as one has the foresight, he or she would rather progress a bit slower than forcefully breaking through. Yi Chen nodded. He had done the same thing. Without 99% confidence, he would never make a breakthrough. Snow Air Emperor continued, Old Stone's talent is not bad, but because of revenge, he forcefully broke through, damaging his foundation. These years, although he has been trying to repair his foundation, he is still lacking a bit. Emperor Spirit Root can't help one break through to the 8th layer, but it can help stabilize one's foundation. The old stone she was talking about was Stone Emperor. I see. Yi Chen said, in that case, let's go find the Emperor Spirit Root. I believe you already have some clues. He had no use for the Emperor Spirit Root, but the fact that Stone Emperor could reach the 8th layer was a good thing for him. The stronger his friends were, the stronger their circle would be. Milky Way, the most mysterious river in the cosmos. No one knew where it came from, and no one knew where it flowed. It was not inferior to the illusory river of fate. Within the Milky Way, there were Milky Way's water beasts that had yet to awaken their spiritual wisdom. Each and every one of them was ferocious, and the powerful ones were even comparable to supreme beings. However, supreme water beasts usually appeared in the main branches of the Milky Way. Such powerful water beasts had never been seen in the tributaries. It was said that Emperor Spirit Roots could only be found in the Milky Way. Since there was a Milky Way, there would naturally be some islands. As long as one could find plants on these islands, even weeds, they would have unimaginable power. Of course, Yi Chen's group of 5 wouldn't go to the main branches or the larger tributaries. There was only one main branch of the Milky Way, and there were hundreds of tributaries. They were called the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade tributaries. Their destination this time was the 5th grade tributary. These tributaries were innumerable, and the danger was much lower. However, compared to the Purple Flower Secret Realm, the 5th grade tributary was countless times more dangerous. Chapter 1224. Going to the 5th grade tributary wasn't just to find Imperial Path Spirit Roots for the Stone Puppet Emperor. If it was just that, the Stone Puppet Emperor would feel bad. After all, putting everyone in danger for his own benefit wasn't something a friend would do. The greater the danger, the greater the wealth. There were many treasures on the Celestial River. The first was the Celestial River Islands. As long as they found the islands, no matter what was on them, the trip wouldn't have been in vain. If they were lucky, they might even find rare ancient spirit herbs. The second was the Celestial River Water Monster. The Celestial River Water Monster was both a danger and an opportunity. Its essence blood could be used to strengthen the body and improve the spirit body. It could also be used to refine medicines. Its Niden was a treasure. A primary Niden was worth 10 million source stones. A middle Niden was worth 1 billion source stones. This was mainly because the Niden of the Celestial River Water Monster was very pure and could continuously replenish one's energy. It was much faster and more convenient than absorbing energy from source stones. The third was the unique treasures of the celestial river. These treasures came in all shapes and sizes. Some could be a mystical piece of metal, some could be a piece of wood, and some could even be a huge leaf. While it might sound unremarkable, the people who had obtained these treasures all greatly valued them. The celestial river traversed the entire universe with countless tributaries. A month later, Yi Chen's group arrived at a fifth-grade tributary. From far away, Yi Chen could see the boundless Sky River. This fifth-grade Sky River tributary was immeasurably long, wide, and thick. It was like a prehistoric white dragon as it floated there. The white river water flowed without a sound, tranquil, and without ripples. The stone puppet emperor said, "Looking at the celestial river from the outside is different from entering it. The inside of the celestial river is a world of its own. Once you get close, you'll be sucked in. You can't see the outside world from the celestial river, but you can see the blue sky, white clouds, and the sun. Of course, there are also the fierce beasts and water monsters that live in the celestial river. In order to come to the celestial river, I modified the Scarlet Wind." The Scarlet Wind Emperor waved his hand and a giant ship appeared. Looking closely, one could see that the giant ship was very similar to the Scarlet Wind ship. Only the bow was modified with a deck, and the stern was modified with a cabin in the middle. The modification wouldn't affect the performance of the ship. Otherwise, the Scarlet Wind Emperor wouldn't be willing to do it. After all, the Scarlet Wind ship was an Emperor-class warship that couldn't be bought with money. Whoosh! The five of them flew onto the deck of the Scarlet Wind battleship. Under the control of the Scarlet Wind Emperor, the Scarlet Wind battleship rapidly flew toward the celestial river. Voila! The sound of waves crashing against each other could be heard as the Scarlet Wind landed steadily on the surface of the heavenly river. Raising his head again, Yi Chen couldn't see the starry sky anymore. Between heaven and earth, there was only a vast expanse of whiteness. Their luck wasn't good. The place they appeared in had a mist, which could absorb soul power. Even Yi Chen's soul power could only reach a few hundred meters. Any further and it would be beyond his reach. Damn, it's the heavenly river mist. The Scarlet Wind Emperor cursed. The mist above the heavenly river was naturally formed by the river water. The water of the heavenly river was originally able to absorb soul strength and block detection. Even after turning into mist, the effect was still the same. "Let's get out of this fog first," the Snow Air Emperor reminded. The Scarlet Wind Emperor nodded and controlled the Scarlet Wind to increase its speed. Traveling on the heavenly river was thousands of times slower than traveling in the universe. Even after half a day had passed, they were still unable to walk out of the fog. Instead, they were gradually going deeper into it. "Oh no!" The stone statue emperor frowned. "This fog covers a large area. Without 10 days to half a month, I'm afraid we won't be able to get out. Let me evaporate this fog." The fire sparrow emperor stood at the front of the ship. Suddenly, she puffed up her mouth. Boom! A sky-high flame wave shot out from her mouth, turning into a fire dragon that wreaked havoc. "Please don't," the stone statue emperor couldn't stop her in time. Kai, kai, kai. A large amount of fog was evaporated. However, the phoenix flame that could turn everything into nothingness couldn't do anything to the fog of the heavenly river. Instead, it made the fog thicker and thicker. In the end, besides the deck, it was so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers. Even with Yi Chen's soul power, he could only detect a few meters away from the deck. "What's going on?" The fire sparrow emperor hurriedly closed her mouth. The stone man emperor explained with a wry smile, "I forgot to remind you, as soon as the water leaves the surface of the river, it will immediately turn into mist. Although your phoenix fire evaporated a lot of the mist, it also pulled up the water below, causing the mist to become thicker and thicker." Yi Chen frowned and suddenly said, "Then, the fog before wasn't formed naturally. There was some kind of ripple that formed it." "Right." The stone statue emperor nodded. "Maybe there was a great battle between the water monsters. Or maybe it's the heavenly river's turbulence that happens every once in a while. Since we're already here, let's just go in one direction." Facing this kind of situation, there was no way to solve it quickly. Inside the heavenly river, no one knew the time. Using the chronograph, they knew that a week had passed. In this week, they didn't encounter any water monsters. In the 5th rank tributary, the chance of water monsters appearing was relatively low. Otherwise, there wouldn't be many people here. At least, without the power of a high-level king, no one would dare to come here. As the fog was getting thinner and thinner, and they were about to leave this area, trouble came. Boom! A huge black shadow suddenly rushed up from the bottom of the river and knocked the Scarlet Wind ship away. Waves swept across the sky, and the fog thickened again. Not good. The Scarlet Wind Emperor reacted quickly and hurriedly controlled the Scarlet Wind ship to hover in the air. Standing on the ship's railing, everyone looked down. The river below was overflowing, and a black head popped out. This head was only the tip of the iceberg, but it was already 1,000 times bigger than the Scarlet Wind ship. Its huge eyes were like 2 small stars, flickering with a bloodthirsty light. Its mouth was very long, a bit like a crocodile's. There were 3 rows of teeth inside, and each tooth was dozens of times bigger than the Scarlet Wind ship. With just a glance, they could feel an extremely tyrannical prehistoric beast's aura rushing over, shaking their minds. This is a mid-tier water monster, the Fear Beast. The stone statue emperor was very knowledgeable, and he immediately recognized the water monster. The heavenly river's water monsters were also divided into tiers. From weak to strong, they were low-tier water monsters, mid-tier water monsters, high-level water monsters, peak-tier water monsters, pseudo-tier water monsters, super-tier water monsters, super-tier water monsters, super-tier water monsters. Normally, low-tier water monsters were equivalent to low-tier king warriors, mid-tier king warriors were equivalent to mid-tier king warriors, and behind them were high-level king warriors, peak-tier king warriors, quasi-venerable warriors, supreme venerable warriors, and powerful supreme venerable warriors. A mid-tier water monster was already so big. It wasn't hard to imagine how big the water monsters behind it would be. Chapter 1225. Roar. The giant head of the evil beast was completely exposed. It looked like a giant island. It opened its mouth and roared, causing waves to soar up to the sky. Such a powerful sound wave. Although the Scarlet Wind warship was an Emperor-grade warship that could withstand the attack of a beginner combat Emperor, and a middle combat Emperor wouldn't be able to break the defensive barrier of the Scarlet Wind warship in a short period of time. However, the roar of the evil beast still shook the Scarlet Wind warship. The pale red defensive barrier kept distorting and deforming, producing a creaking sound that made people's teeth ache. Get down. After the main cannon finished charging, the Scarlet Wind Emperor's thoughts moved, and 2 beams of red light bombarded the terror beast's head. An earth-shattering sound rang out, but it was unknown if the terror beast was injured. However, the powerful impact caused the terror beast to sink to the bottom of the water. The splashing waves were like flying swords that struck the Scarlet Wind ship's defensive barrier, making pa-pa sounds. Without any hesitation, the Scarlet Wind Emperor controlled the Scarlet Wind warship and flew away at a low altitude. It was an arduous and unrewarding task to fight a middle-level water monster to death. The combat strength of a middle-level water monster was similar to a middle-level emperor, but its life force was thousands of times stronger than a middle-level emperor. It was extremely difficult to kill it. Unfortunately, the Scarlet Wind Emperor had miscalculated the difficulty of dealing with the evil beast. In the white mist, a long black shadow broke through the water and flew towards the Scarlet Wind warship. With a bang, the Scarlet Wind warship was sent flying. It eventually hit the surface of the water, sliding and rolling all the way. The black shadow was the tail of the evil beast. It was a few 100 miles long and was covered with a layer of cuticle like the skin of a crocodile. Swoosh! At this moment, a silhouette flew out from the Scarlet Wind warship and slashed at the eye of the evil beast. Poochie. No matter how strong the evil beast was, it only had the strength of a middle-level emperor. It only had a strong life force. The one who attacked was Yi Chen. After casting momentary brilliance, he instantly opened up a deep bloody hole on the left eye of the evil beast. Countless sword chi formed a spiral shape and sliced at the evil beast. Roar. Feeling the pain, the terror beast unceasingly slapped the heavenly river's surface. All of a sudden, a boundless white mist rose up like thick smoke, making one unable to see their own fingers in front of them. However, the terror beast was not affected by the white mist, and its tail accurately lashed out at Yi Chen. Troublesome. Yi Chen frowned. In the Milky Way, his soul power was restricted by the fog and could only spread out a small area. Only when the tail was about to reach him did he react. Clang. The flying heaven's sword swept horizontally and Yi Chen firmly blocked the tail of the terror beast. However, the tail's power couldn't be removed, and it sent Yi Chen flying backward into the river. This is the water of the heavenly river. It's so cold. The moment he entered the bottom of the heavenly river, Yi Chen's first reaction was cold, and his second reaction was still cold. This kind of cold was not only on his body, but also on his soul. It seemed like even his thoughts were frozen. Moreover, as the depth increased, the temperature of the river plummeted. There were even white ice crystals forming on Yi Chen's body. However, what made Yi Chen feel strange was that his vision was not restricted at the bottom of the heavenly river. Although his soul power was slightly restricted, it was not as big as above. He could see the scene tens of thousands of li away. He saw other water beasts. Based on their body shape, they were all low-grade water beasts. They didn't compete with the evil beast above for food. Moreover, at the bottom of the river, these water beasts were very lazy. They swam very slowly, and their eyes were very dull. Too cold. When he reached 1,000 meters deep, he started to feel that he couldn't bear the cold anymore. If he continued, he might be frozen and fall into an eternal slumber. Fortunately, the power on his body had disappeared. Yi Chen operated his Zhen Yuan and rushed up. The ice crystals on his body also shattered and fell off. Boom! The water column exploded, and Yi Chen rushed out. Facing him was still the evil beast's tail. The heavenly river was the territory of the water beasts. They could easily observe their movements, but not Yi Chen. Open! A silver light flickered between his eyebrows as Yi Chen opened his soul eyes. Once he opened his soul eyes, the situation became much better. His vision could see more than 1,000 li away. The flying heaven sword clashed with the evil beast's tail. Yi Chen borrowed the force and moved hundreds of li away as if he was weightless. Without any hesitation, Yi Chen performed his strongest sword art at the evil beast Doomsday Meteor Sword. Ha! The flying heaven sword was like a huge fire god sword as it slashed out. The huge sword light was many times bigger than the evil beast's body. The evil beast couldn't dodge at all, and was directly hit by the meteor-like sword light. Swoosh! Black blood burst out. The center of the evil beast's body was cut open. Its internal organs were black like the blood. Only that huge inner dan was white, as pure as the heavenly river's water. However, the evil beast didn't die after receiving this attack. Its body sank, and it was about to sink into the water. Where are you going? How could Yi Chen let go of this opportunity? The Doomsday Meteor Sword had used up 1/3 of his sword energy. If he didn't get anything out of it, it would be a waste. Taking a deep breath, Yi Chen performed the Doomsday Meteor Sword again. The sword energy in his body was instantly reduced by half. With a rumbling sound, the heavenly river's water was cut open, and the evil beast's body was cut into 4 pieces. The violent Doomsday Sword Qi wreaked havoc, killing the evil beast's vitality. After struggling for a while, the evil beast finally died completely. It floated on the river's surface, and its black blood dyed the water black. With a gentle push, Yi Chen landed on the evil beast's body. With a wave of his hand, a white inner dan the size of a small mountain flew over. By the time it reached his hand, it had shrunk to the size of a bowl. Waves of white light surged around it, and essence surged. The inner dan of a mid-ranked water monster was worth 1 billion essence stones. It was more or less enough to replenish Yi Chen's sword energy thrice. Of course, Yi Chen himself had lost 2/3 of his sword energy. When he left, Yi Chen discovered dozens of low-ranked water monsters rushing over, fighting over the evil beast's corpse. The black blood seemed to be nourishing to them, and they fought over it crazily. In just a short while, the evil beast's mountain-sized body was snatched clean. The river's surface also recovered its white color, without a trace of impurities. Revealing a pensive expression, Yi Chen didn't go and kill them. The fog here was too thick. If he didn't leave now, he would sink deeper and deeper. Moreover, he could faintly sense a horrifying aura attacking him. Yi Chen, what happened to the evil beast? Seeing that Yi Chen had returned to the Scarlet Wind, the Scarlet Wind Emperor asked. Dead. Yi Chen took out the evil beast's inner Dan. Mid-ranked inner Dan. It's indeed dead. Impressive. You've just entered the 7th layer of Life and Death realm, and you already have the strength to contend against high-ranked emperors. Perhaps in a few years, when you enter the 8th layer, you'll be an invincible existence under Supremes. The Scarlet Wind Emperor raised his thumb. Although he was at the 8th layer of Life and Death realm, his strength was far inferior to Yi Chen's. He was only equivalent to an ordinary emperor. A while after the Scarlet Wind ship left, an even bigger head appeared. This head's eyes were much bigger than the evil beast's, and its body was completely hidden in the river. Time flowed like the water of the heavenly river. Unknowingly, 2 years had passed. During this year, the group didn't find any heavenly river islands. They were extremely rare, and not that easy to find. However, they did obtain a lot of low-ranked Innerdans and mid-ranked Innerdans, which were better than nothing. On this day, the 5 of them observed an island far away from where they were. It's an island. Fire Sparrow Emperor and Snow Air Emperor were pleasantly surprised. A joyful expression flickered on Stone Emperor's face as he smiled bitterly. That's a modified island for trading. There's no harm in going there. Who knows, we might be able to trade for something good. Chapter 1226. There were many experts roaming in the Milky Way. It could be said that the Milky Way was the largest secret realm in the universe. Even Supremes would come here to search for treasures. After a long time, someone came up with an idea to build trading points on some of the islands that had already been mined. After all, there were some things that you didn't need, but others did. You could exchange things you didn't need for things you needed. That way, everyone would be happy. Of course, there weren't always people at the trading points. The Milky Way was too big, and there were many trading points. The experts who came here might not appear at the same time. Therefore, if you were unlucky, there might be no one at the trading point. Apart from that, there was another kind of situation. That was greed. Every year, there would be a large number of experts who didn't die in the hands of the water monsters, but died in the hands of other experts. This kind of thing was not uncommon. However, everyone was already used to it. In the universe, the strong preyed on the weak. It wasn't just the Milky Way, other places weren't safe either. The only thing that could make one safe was strength, cautiousness, and some luck. No one. Yi Chen's group of 5 didn't have good luck. The island was empty. The hall that was originally used for trading was covered in dust. It seemed like no one had been here for a long time. After a casual observation, Yi Chen frowned slightly. He had vaguely sensed a trace of the power of a formation. With a trace of vigilance, Yi Chen opened his Eye of the Soul and began to investigate seriously. Leave quickly. This is a trap. Suddenly, Yi Chen waved his hand. Boundless sword energy swept out and wrapped around the 4 of them as they soared into the sky. Haha, where are you going? Stay here. Colorful light shields lit up in all directions. These light shields were densely packed and stacked on top of each other, forming a hemispherical light shield that covered the entire island. At the same time, colorful dark clouds started to appear above everyone's heads. In the dark clouds, 5 colored lightning condensed and produced earth-splitting noises. Small 5 elemental lightning formation. What a good move. The Scarlet Wind Emperor had a grave expression. The small 5 elemental thunder light array was a combination of attack and sealing. The higher the strength of the person who set it up, the more powerful the array would be. Although it was a small 5 elemental thunder light array, it was divided into 3 stages. The primary stage small 5 elemental thunder light array required 480 million primal stones to set up and could completely seal several primary stage Emperor Realm experts. The intermediate stage small 5 elemental thunder light array required 1. 28 billion primal stones to set up, and could seal several intermediate-stage Emperor realm experts. This kind of magic array was classified as a top-secret magic array. The number of people who knew how to set it could be counted on one hand. Although the human race had magic arrays that were not weaker or even stronger than this one, they did not have the small 5 elements lightning array. The master of this magic array was the 3 ultimate supremes of the demons. The supremes of the 3 absolutes had 3 absolutes, and formations were one of them. The stone puppet emperor stared at the 5-colored clouds above him and said, "The minor 5 elemental lightning formation's lightning is endless. If we cannot break the formation, we will die sooner or later." That's right. Since it dares to call itself the 5 elements, to a certain extent, it is already an independent world. The Snow Air Emperor said worriedly, "Watch as I burn it." The Fire Sparrow Emperor opened his mouth, and a fire dragon whizzed out, rushing towards the 5-colored clouds. Crack! Following the flow of energy, a 5-colored lightning struck down, landing on the fire dragon. The fire dragon was like a living thing, turning into ashes. Doesn't seem easy to deal with. Yi Chen's soul eye saw clearly that the 5-colored lightning had directly destroyed the fire dragon. Normally, fire dragons were made of energy, so they could not be destroyed. At most, they would just disperse. From the name of the magic array, this lightning should have been infused with the profound meaning of the 5 elements. It was the 5 elements lightning. Crack! The 5-colored clouds became denser and denser, turning chaotic. The 5-colored lightning was like a group of snakes, gathering in the depths of the clouds. All of a sudden, a hole appeared in the clouds, and a waist-thick 5-colored lightning struck down. Along the way, the 5-colored lightning turned into a 5-colored dragon, roaring. Break! The Scarlet Wind Emperor waved the iron fan in his hand, and a tri-colored light shot out, colliding with the 5-colored divine dragon. With a rumble, a mushroom cloud spread out, and the 5-colored divine dragon and the tri-colored light perished together. Such power! The Scarlet Wind Emperor was slightly shocked. A 5-colored lightning could actually cancel out his secret art. If there were 10 or 20 of them, he would not be able to block them at all. Fortunately, they had Yi Chen here, or else they would definitely die. I will look for the flaws of the magic array. The Snow Air Emperor was quite knowledgeable about magic arrays. Even if she found the flaws of the magic array, she would not be able to break it with her strength. Unfortunately, the person who set up the magic array did not know that Yi Chen's strength could not be judged by cultivation. The small 5 elements lightning light magic array could trap several intermediate emperor warriors, but Yi Chen was much stronger than several intermediate emperor warriors. Crack! Crack! This time, 3 5-colored lightning struck down, turning into 3 divine dragons. Let me! Yi Chen pulled out the flying heaven sword and performed Moment of Glory. Poochie! The 3 divine dragons were instantly shattered, and the sword chi's remaining power did not dissipate. It pierced into the clouds, and with a crackling sound, a big hole appeared in the 5-colored clouds, as if the sky had been pierced through. In the magic array, a person exclaimed in surprise. Someone next to him said, "This person's combat ability is very high. He can actually pierce through the 5 elemental clouds. This is not something an ordinary intermediate emperor warrior can do. Only a high-level emperor warrior can have such attack power. No worries. If it was just a magic array, it should not be able to do anything to him. But with us in charge, he will not be able to escape even if he grows wings." A person in the middle was full of confidence. It was a young man. He was the last disciple of the 3 absolutes of the demons, the Demon Array Emperor. He had inherited the 3 absolutes array Dao. Among the young emperor warriors, he could be considered an influential figure. This small 5 elements lightning light magic array was one of the magic arrays he was most proficient in. As a disciple of the 3 absolutes, he was not a person who just copied everything. After learning the essence of the small 5 elements lightning light magic array, he used his imagination and used 5 people to set up the magic array. Everyone had to be proficient in one of the 5 elements, and it would be better if 2 or more of them were proficient. This way, the magic array would have more flaws, but its power would be stronger and more terrifying. Kill the enemy quickly, Metal attack. The demon array emperor shouted and waved his hand. The next moment, a 5-colored lightning with golden light blasted at Yi Chen. Wood attack. Water attack. Fire attack. Earth attack. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth. The 5 elements combine into one, chaos thunder. 5 types of lightning with the same color but different texture struck at Yi Chen. Then, the 5 types of lightning started to fuse, turning into huge thunderballs. These thunderballs were completely chaotic in color. Even before they struck down, it gave people the illusion that they were going to split the sky and earth, exploding everything. It was as if these were thunder that came from chaos. If they were perfectly fused, I would naturally not be his opponent. But this kind of lightning cannot do anything to me. The true chaos thunder was a supreme martial art, a supreme thunder art. Even 100 Yi Chens would be annihilated. However, that was the method of a supreme being. Break. If chaos thunder was the thunder that split the sky and earth, then the doomsday meteor sword was the sword art of the end of the world. Once the sword was unleashed, everything would perish and decay. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.